Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. John, do you want to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening to everybody. We have a special presentation tonight. We have an update from the Dublin Convention and Visitor Bureau. Mr. Dring, the Executive Director. That looks like Mr. Belfridge. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Eric Belfridge, the Board President of Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're going to talk to you tonight about a couple of things before I turn it over to Scott. First, our organizational achievements, and then secondly, our strategic planning effort. Organizationally, every year our staff creates a detailed sales and marketing plan, and they create specific objectives and measurable goals. These goals help the Bureau to meet its overall mission to attract visitors and their travel dollars to the city of Dublin. And you'll find in your board packets the results of last year's fiscal plan, including a 27% increase in website visitation, 112% increase in social media engagement. We generated more than 7,800 new room nights and reached about 2.6 million impressions through earned media, among others. Staff has done a remarkable job this past year, surpassing the goals that they set, and they've got a great start to next year. Secondly, our strategic planning effort began last week. This will be our guide to the next 5 to 10 years. And this process included both input from the hospitality industry as well as the community at large. We'll be back in December to present our findings and share with you the vision for our vision for the Dublin travel. And with that, I'd like to introduce Scott Dring, Executive Director.
Thanks, Eric.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Usually, I want to take a couple minutes here and talk a little bit about visitors and the impact, and share some cool results. We have a couple last events that we had in town this past summer. Football University's done. It was another huge success as well, coming here for the second year. Some cool facts that we came up with. The event generated almost 4,000 room nights. It was the largest event in Dublin in 2014. More than 1,500 athletes came from 49 of 50 states across the country. North Dakota was the only absent state. 4 countries came: Canada, England, Sweden, and Belgium, representatives from them. We had 1.2 million Twitter impressions on the event worldwide. One player came from Sweden, almost 4,000 miles. Another person domestically came from Hawaii, almost 4,400 miles. Huge media across the country about the event. Dublin was in the dateline of more than 40 papers, including the USA Today, Wall Street Journal as well. And one of my fun facts, there were more than 8,000 subs created by a local establishment to feed the camp as well. So a lot of economic impact as well. We're making a lot of strides for next year. All the ducks seem to be getting in a row and the stars are aligning. We've worked with Dublin City Schools, Children's Hospital, others, and as well as ourselves, and they are confident to bring it back here. So we'll be updating you here in the next few months on potentially a partnership with that. One thing I would like to mention, because the event was so large, the investment that the council provided last year was recouped 100% just because of the bed tax revenue that was generated from that one event. So thank you for your investment in that event as well. Australian rules football. I think we first talked about this 4 years ago, and it's finally here. October 10 and 12 at Darry Fields. Almost 40 teams from 40 cities across the United States will be here for their national championship. Tremendous event. The public's going to love it. It's free to the public. It'll take up all of Darry Fields. Big thank you to staff, Fred, Allison, Christine, the whole group, to helping us with all our needs with that. And that's going to be a huge event. We're excited to welcome them here in a couple weeks. I did want to kind of talk about visitors for a minute as it kind of relates to these. Last year, Dublin hosted 2.6 million visitors for day trips and overnight trips in the city of Dublin. And I think most of us think, when you think of results of visitors, as bed tax. That bed tax was almost $2.5 million in bed tax revenue because of those visitors that came to our hotels and to our city. I think a lot of us residents take some of the amenities that those bed tax generates for granted sometimes. I think the tremendous work the Dublin Arts Council does with this program, Art in Public Places, the Co-Ed Avenues exhibit that will be coming up here. Most of those programs would not be available if it wasn't for our visitors. Events like the 4th of July, our parades, and I go on and on. Supporting special events like the Special Olympics, DYA, Kiwanis, Frog Jump, others as well. So it's really a huge benefit to our community to have those visitors in town. One thing also that I think is a bit of a hidden factor when it comes to visitors are hotels. And we often look at hotels as a corporation in itself. Last year, more than $50 million was spent at Dublin's hotels. In addition to that, if you add food and beverage, that's close to another $30 million. It's almost an $80 million company right here in Dublin, and we all know how important income tax is to the community. Those are lots of jobs that's bringing the bottom line. The city's bottom line with that as well. And I think the cool thing about those jobs, too, they aren't going anywhere. I mean, no one's stealing those jobs, our hotel jobs, from under us at any other community. So it's really, we look at it as a corporation in of itself that really adds to the income tax and as well. Economic impact, we know the visitors do that. I was actually in a meeting a couple weeks ago talking about the DNC, and I heard some crazy number, $150 to $200 million economic impact with that. Sounds like a lot of money. I'm not sure exactly what all that means, but economic impact in our community is huge when visitors come here. When visitors come here, you would think hotel is their highest ticket item. It's not. It's at restaurants, shopping, and so forth. So when they come to our community and spend money, they're spending most of their money at our local restaurants and establishment. Things like those 8,000 subs that really trickle down and help the entire economy as a whole. And finally, I think raising exposure and awareness of our community. The Ohio Premier Soccer Tournament was here a couple weeks ago with almost 300 teams from all over the Midwest. No telling how many people were introduced to Dublin for the first time then. Maybe it could be future residents, future business leaders looking for a place to stake a claim with their company. So it's always good to get awareness in the community for the city of Dublin as well. Finally, I'd like to kind of commit to you with the infrastructure improvements going on. I think the Bureau is committed to work closely with the city of Dublin to make sure that we work with staff to make sure the message is the same, to make sure that we communicate to our visitors and make sure they get around from point A to point B as best they can. I was telling Eric this summer I was in a national think tank with a lot of national travel and tourism people, and the number one concern for those was the failing infrastructure across our roads and bridges across the entire country, especially when international visitors are coming here in the future. And I think because of your insight and vision that we're going to be well ahead of the game in several years to be very, very competitive and be able to be ahead of most destinations when it comes to our infrastructure. So thank you all for your vision in getting that done here in the next coming years, and we'll be any kind of resource and support as we can as we work through that. Thank you. Any questions?
Scott?
Yep.
Can you say just a little bit more about the Australian Football Championship, about the excitement of it, and do we have media support for that? Because that is really an exciting sport to watch, and to what level are we going to get media support for that, do you?
Yeah, well, it's cool. It's actually going to be simulcast worldwide. It's a U.S. Australian Football League, USAFAL, actually simulcasts this. We are at worldwide. There's actually 2 Australian rules teams coming from Australia that they're coming to Dublin to do as well, to participate, several Canadian items. So locally, we'll work local on the media. I think it's going to be a tremendous event, like you said, but internationally, Dublin's going to be seen worldwide for those games. The games start Saturday at 9. They go all the way to the championship Sunday afternoon. For those of you who know Dari Fields, if you take 2 soccer fields and lay them next to each other, that is one Australian Rules Football League field. So it is a massive field. There's going to be 6 of them, so it'll be quite a spectacle, taking up the whole facility there. There's going to be interactive stuff for kids there. Food, all kinds of stuff. Bring lounge chairs because it is a very relaxed, great atmosphere. It was in Austin, Texas last year to big success. So, and actually the defending champions are the Columbus Jackaroos, our local team here in the Central Ohio. So they'll be defending their national championship in their backyard, so to speak, as well. So it's a tremendous spectator sport and people will love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate the update, and we're going to be looking to DCVB to help us communicate the transportation issue with our business community here, so I know you'll help out with that as well. So, before we get started this evening, we have a special presentation to make. It's a tradition to present a plaque for longtime employees, and because of the unique tenure of this city employee, we decided to present her plaque during tonight's city council meeting. Marcia, would you come forward, please? She knew nothing of this, so.
You hate it.
Tonight, it gives me great pleasure to honor Marcia on her 25th anniversary with the city of Dublin. I've got some prepared. I didn't think so. Marcia began her career with the city on September 18th, 1989, just 2 years after Dublin went from being called a village to achieving city status. Imagine, if you will, what Dublin was like in 1989. There was no Dublin Community Recreation Center. There was not even a Dublin Community Pool South. There was no service center or justice center. In fact, the police department was located downstairs in this building. The Dublin Irish Festival welcomed only about 500 attendees. There were no dancing hares or field of corn, and Emerald Parkway was but a twinkle in the eye of then planners Pat Bowman and Bobby Clark. I believe it's important to point these things out because much of what we have been able to achieve in this community is in large part due to the visions of city leaders and the financial talents of Marcia Grigsby. She helped craft many of the tax increment financing plans that enabled us to budget for so many of our capital improvements and set the course for the city to achieve the highest bond ratings available from Moody's Investor Service and Fitch Ratings. She's been a dedicated and loyal employee for 25 years. When our 3 previous city managers left the city, Dublin City Council turned to Marcia, who served as interim city manager and continued to steer the ship. We were delighted 4 years ago when she accepted the position of city manager, and it is bittersweet to know that she will be retiring in January. But it's quite fitting that one of the projects for which she helped outline funding for, all 8 of its phases, Emerald Parkway, will be completed at the end of November. Emerald Parkway is considered to be the crown jewel of the city of Dublin's transportation network, and Marcia Grigsby always will be considered to be one of our true gems. Thanks, Marcia, and congratulations on 25 years of public service to the city of Dublin. Thank you. Got it? And this plaque is for you, and I'll read this. The City of Dublin recognizes Marcia Grigsby for 25 years of faithful service to the City of Dublin. Thank you so much. And I think it'd be appropriate. Council, would everybody like to weigh in briefly? John, I'll let you start.
Well, I got to say that her financial knowledge, her dedication, her forward-lookingness, her focus, I don't think I've ever met an employee in my life to match Marcia Grigsby. The care you put into the city, the effort, your knowledge of every little thing going on here in every department is just so impressive. It's amazing. And I just can't say how much I appreciate what you've done for all of us, all 40,000 residents, to make us a great place. You technically lived and breathed and was the city, so just thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
Rick?
Marcia, I've had the pleasure of introducing you to several places for speaking engagements, such as AM Dublin Rotary, and as I always say, Marcia is a lady among ladies, and we're going to sorely miss you, but you have certainly put your stamp on this community, and thank you so much.
Merely.
Well, I'm really glad that we still have 4 more months of this intelligence, because the one thing that I will always remember, and I always tell people, was for all these years that you've been here, every crazy idea that councils have had along the way, and citizens, that instead of saying, no, we cannot, you always have said, yes, we can do that. And you have figured out a creative financial package that made it possible for the city to make the investments they've been made and to make this community what it is. for both our residents and our corporate residents as well. And to that, we can never replace you, and that attitude that you have has really helped build this city. Thank you so much.
Amy?
What they all said. But I'd say additionally, one thing that sticks in my mind when I think about different conversations I've had with different community leaders, different business leaders, everyone is so complimentary of you, and it's not just your intellect, and it's not just your knowledge, your institutional knowledge, it's not just your creativity with financing, but the thing that means the most to me, and I think you will be remembered for, is your personal integrity, and the fact that everyone knows that you mean what you say, and you say what you mean, and you can always be counted on to be good for your word. And that is, I think, a rarity in public service, you know, that level of trust and that level of respect. But I think that is something that's held uniformly throughout our community, and in fact, anybody across the country who's ever dealt with you, whether it be a corporate leader or a resident. And I will always remember you for that, and thank you for that.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Marcia, you were here on my first go-around on City Council, and the steady hand with which you have steered the ship has been truly remarkable. And your modesty and your humility, and I know you're terrifically uncomfortable standing here listening to people talk about it.
That is true.
That's what makes you so exceptional. And without any exception, and meaning no offense to anybody that's been replaced in this city over the last 25 years, I'm not looking forward to being involved with trying to replace you. It will not be possible. We will try to do the best we can, but there is no other person that has worked for this city that is going to leave as big of a hole as you will when you leave. So thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you. You know, all of us have been through innumerable meetings over the many years each one of us has served. And one thing that struck me, and everything else you all said would certainly apply, but I don't remember ever asking a question that she didn't have the answer or was able to get the answer. And let me tell you how difficult it is to sit up there in front of this seven-headed group and deal with it night in, night out, and be able to come up with those answers. It's amazing, and we appreciate it. And I'll let you say a few words.
Well, this is very shocking and very humbling. You know, I was very lucky to come here when I did, because we had so many opportunities to do things at the city, and the people that I had the good fortune to work with at a staff level and all the different council members over the years, it's been a pleasure. There have been some bad days and some rough times, and some of them probably happened in this room, but I was very fortunate to have been able to spend 25 years of my career at the City of Dublin, and it really is rewarding to be able to work in a place that people are committed and dedicated to do what's in the best interest of the community. And when you drive around Dublin, I think that shows. And so it's truly been an honor to have spent all the time that I've spent in Dublin, and you know, I'll take it with me wherever I go. And I truly appreciate all the kind words that council said. And there are many other employees across the city that are deserving of those same words. So I find it hard to believe I've been here 25 years. If you would have told me when I first came that I would be here 25 years, I would have thought you were crazy. But it's been very enjoyable, and I thank you all very much.
I think we got her. Okay, then, this will bring us to the portion of the meeting for citizen comments. Mr. Maurer, I see you've signed up.
You think you've heard all that you're going to hear. Get ready. You might remember at the last council meeting, I said I wasn't finished what I was dealing with there, and I was going to continue this evening. And what I had gotten into in the last council meeting was that never mind the backdrop of how I got into it, but I got into discussion of who, men or women, are and should be in seats of power now, from village to president. And I said that the events of the last few months have driven me to have my political activity aimed at getting 51% women in government. Now, the reason being that a woman has a quality which men can't have. They can, with a great deal of imagination, get to it, but they cannot have it, and women do have it. And I'll be right back to you near the end here. And here's this is elemental, this is existential. Getting right to the bottom of things. A woman who carries around in her for 9 months another human being, when that human being shows up, that little thing shrieking in the cold after it has come out of warm 9 months, that woman becomes overwhelmed with protectiveness, with the sense of protecting, with a sense of shielding, with a sense of infinite tenderness. And it is instantly, spontaneously coming up with that mode, with those feelings. And that, frankly, is the quality which has to get into government from village to president or king around the country. Because men, with the exception of all the men here tonight, all men except those here tonight, are self-centered, egotistical, aggressive. I'll beat you before you beat me. And as I say, except those here tonight, everybody here. But we need that ingredient in government which shields and which protects rather than carries on with, shutting down the guns for a week or so, which never works. The men immediately are aggressive. The women are protective. And it's that element which has got to get into government in a high place, in power throughout the planet. So, you saw an exhibition of it here tonight. She doesn't care a hoot about having been in the spotlight. She has done her job. Women are born managers. The moment the child appears, the management begins. They can handle multi-level things because they have no intention of furthering themselves or of wanting the limelight. And it was a very happy coincidence, and I've told you before what I thought of you. It's a very happy coincidence that you've seen that kind of work operate here. So that's my speech to the planet for the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. I see Julie Phelps has signed up.
Beg pardon?
I was asking for Julie Phelps, who's the next speaker.
Oh.
Is she here?
Well, I'm a man, you see, I hog the thing first.
Always profound, Mr. Maurer.
Hi, my name's Julie Phelps, and I am a resident on Post Road. And mine's really more of a question. I've talked back and forth with staff on planning and zoning, and I was under the understanding that you all had commissioned a study to be done with Franklin County on the sewer systems and where we might add some or not. And I thought it was going to be a topic tonight, I am in one of those areas that will possibly be affected. So it's really more of a question. I didn't see it on the agenda tonight, and I was wondering if it is still on your minds and what your thoughts are for where this might go and when I need to come to the next meeting.
Well, I know we did receive a full report, which, an informational report for us to review and to be in touch with the subject matter. Could you give us your exact address too for the record, please? Your address?
I'm sorry, 6290 Post Road.
Very good. Marcia, do you want to address
Yes,
that, please?
there is a memo included in your packet this evening that talks about the work the city commissioned to have completed by the Franklin County Board of Health and the Soil and Water Conservation District, and a report that summarizes what the work was and what they found out. So we have that information and that data for review. Our next step is to bring back, and we plan to bring back to council at the October 27th meeting, draft policies to take a look at, and then at some point after that is when we would have meetings with city council, if they so choose, to look at how we go about addressing the unserved areas.
Okay, and you said, because all I did was pick up the agenda, did you say there's a packet out there that
There's a
talks about?
memo. There's a memo in the packet this evening, and we can get you a copy of that.
Okay,
Probably
great.
online too, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be online as well.
Okay, I can just get it online then.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good information about the number of systems that are out there, where they're located, maps, et cetera, and some of the criteria that we'll be addressing, so I understand it. So.
Okay, thanks, because I know there's been a lot of discussion on what to do with Post Road because of the creek that runs down through Kaufman Park. And I know several of you know, I've been kind of looking at what to do with property there, but I don't want to make one move and then the sewer be brought in later and then have, invested a bunch of money in other systems if we do have the possibility of it coming down. And I don't even necessarily care if it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. I just would love to have an idea of when, so I know whether to move forward or not.
We'll make sure staff addresses this
Thank
in
you.
particular with you as well, and they'll be in touch with you.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Mayor Keenan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay, this brings us to the consent agenda. Any council member have any item they'd like to remove? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the actions for the 9 items? On the motion?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Second reading of ordinance 91-14.
Thank you, and good evening, members of council.
Yep, we need to,
Oh, I thought you did, I'm sorry.
oh, we don't need to read it? We're good?
No, that's second.
Good?
Okay, Dana, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, no, that's all right, thank you. So as presented to you in updated staff report accompanying ordinance 9114, staff has continued to discuss the proposed economic development and real estate purchase agreement with VA Data, Inc. Several changes have been made. Most changes have been relatively minor, however. No changes have been made relative to any incentives being proposed. 2 changes of note include, first, an additional reconveyance in the form of land or payment by the company should certain progress not be made relative to the initial site preparation by 1 year from the issuance of the building permit or December 15, 2015, whichever is later, unless a reasonable extension is otherwise granted by the city. And second, the placement of perimeter fencing and associated mounting and landscaping as referenced in the agreement. Staff recommends council pass ordinance 9114, passing this as an emergency and waiving the 30-day waiting period, and we'll try to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions from council? Mr. Maurer, I see you've signed up for this.
Would you look, please, at the memo, page 1, under background, paragraph 2, bullet point number 3, the reference to the Nestle Quality Assurance Center. You remember sometime back, and I don't want to review the whole thing, I had to go around with you about the Nestle Corporation. And I think we concluded at that time that their Quality Assurance Center was to be an internal monitoring of their products. You remember that? Is that what it was? An internal monitoring of their products. My question is, does the FDA, in its turn, monitor the judgments of the Nestle internal monitoring thing?
I couldn't really answer specifically as to how Nestle interacts with FDA. However, we just recently celebrated the opening of their new laboratory that they just expanded on there, and that they consider that their lighthouse quality assurance center for both North and South America. And all of their quality assurance regarding a lot of their food lines happen now here in Dublin, Ohio.
Yeah, well, I don't want to run all over the same thing again, but as I mentioned back then, that was the fox in the hen house. And I assume that the FDA overarches over them, but I'll find out about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, based on the staff recommendation, I move for emergency passage of this ordinance this evening.
Second,
Thank you. On the motion?
yes.
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 Yes. And on the ordinance?
Yes.
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 Okay, ordinance 92-14. Ms. Cox? Mr. Hammersmith.
Mayor and members of council, you have before you this evening a proposed road name change within the Bridge Street District. As the roadway improvements are progressing and the grid street network is emerging, it does present challenges in the district with the existing configuration of roadways and their names. So with that, staff is proposing this evening that the name of Tuller Ridge Drive between Tuller Road and the southern end of Tuller Ridge Drive be renamed to Dale Drive, and there is an exhibit within your packet depicting that. This will ease or provide for better wayfinding and delivery of emergency services into the future, and really be a network that, with names that will be more typical and expected as the Bridge Street District progresses. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions, but staff does recommend approval this evening upon the second reading.
Thank you, council. Questions? Hearing none. We'll have a vote on the ordinance.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. I move to waive the council rules of order to consider ordinances 93-14 and 94-14 together, and to have the clerk read the names of the property owners into the record.
Second.
On the motion? Yes.
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 Very good. Mr. Hammersmith?
Members of council, you have before you this evening two easements necessary to address ongoing stormwater runoff concerns associated with city-owned property. That city-owned property being to the west of Earlsford Drive, and being associated with Scottish Corners Park, and particularly the wooded area, the 12 acres of wooded area with Scottish Corners Park. You can see on the exhibit on the screen, we have the two residents. Sorry, we don't have a laser pointer. We have two residents along Earlsford Drive, and we have no storm drainage system to the rear of their properties, where the vast majority of runoff from our wooded area comes towards their properties. Staff has been working with these two residents for the last couple of months. They've been agreeable to provide easements necessary for us to install a system to drain our property. They are doing so at no cost. And with that, we're very appreciative in working in partnership with them. Staff recommends adoption of these two ordinances this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hammersmith. And council discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote on the ordinances 93-14 and 94-14.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
And we have
Thank you.
thank you. First readings, ordinance 97-14.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014.
Thank you. Ms. Muma?
Good evening, members of council. This piece of legislation amends the 2014 annual appropriations. The majority of the legislation pertains to our tax increment financing funds, which appropriates the service payments that we receive in these areas to pay for capital expenditures that have either been approved through our capital improvement program or other legislation that has been brought forward to council. There are some other sections as outlined in your memo that are just cleanup of some of our bond retirement funds and some other funds that need additional appropriations.
Very good. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to dispense with the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Vote on the motion.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
And on the ordinance.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance.
And me.
Ms.
Oh, I'm
Janice
sorry, we
Zerker?
missed one. That was a delay there.
It's like Chicago, you voted twice.
You vote twice. Ordinance 98-14.
Authorizing the city manager to execute necessary conveyance documents to acquire a 0.045 acre more or less permanent easement and a 0.052 acre more or less temporary easement from Adam P. Johnson for the property located at 5851 Dublin Road for the construction of a shared use path as part of the Dublin Road South Phase 3 project and declaring an emergency.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Ms. Grigsby?
As the title states, it's for the acquisition needed for easements for the Dublin Road South Bike Path. Mr. Johnson has agreed to the appraised value on the land. We have a few minor changes that we added, recognizing some costs that he will incur with the new septic system, and we recommend passage this evening. This is the next to last property that we have for the project.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to dispense with the public hearing and treat it as an emergency.
Second.
Thank you. On the motion?
Mr. Peterson? Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Can we get everybody?
Yes, I did.
And on the ordinance?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Very good. We're getting there, Marcia. Ordinance 99-14.
Rezoning approximately 120 acres located on the west side of Avery Road, south of the intersection with Rings Road at the southern city limits from R Rural District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, Avondale Woods Plan to facilitate the future development of up to 360 single and multifamily housing units and 37 acres of open space.
I'll introduce it.
Ms. Husak?
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. This ordinance was reviewed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in August and is recommended for approval at the second reading on scheduled for October the 13th. Planning staff and engineering staff, as well as parks, have been working on some type of application for this area of the city for many years. We're thinking about 10 plus. This application before you tonight is for 120 acres on the southern city limits. On the west side is the CSX Railroad, on the south side is Washington Township, and the city of Columbus is proposing the Hayden Run bypass there, and then on the east side is Avery Road. We've been working with Homewood on this particular application since about 2009, and the Planning and Zoning Commission has reviewed several concept plans that dealt with the layout as well as architectural components, and as I said, approved the application earlier this year for City Council's review. As you can see, there are two areas heavily wooded within the site. To the north is what is called Avondale Woods, and then to the west is Triangle Woods. And the National Church Residences is under construction or closing construction there on the southeast portion of the site, which will also be the main access into the development, Avondale Woods Boulevard. The proposed preliminary development plan includes, as I said, 120 acres for a maximum amount of units permitted at 360 for a total density of 3 units per acre. And in total, there is about 50 acres of open space provided as part of the development. The code would require 22 acres, and 37 of those are in public parks to be dedicated to the city, and then the other open spaces are within reserves and buffer areas, as well as within landscape boulevard islands. There is a clubhouse with a pool proposed to be used by the entire neighborhood, and the development has been divided into 7 sub-areas, which are outlined there on your screen. Real quickly, I'm going to highlight a couple of the elements of each of the sub-areas. Sub-area A is about 8 acres, and it's just north of the entrance there off Avondale Woods Boulevard, and allows 48 units in 2 family dwellings, so there's 24 buildings in total. And this area also includes 1 acre open space in the center, which could be programmed with a community garden or other park amenities. There is a private road proposed within this development that is accessing all of the units. And then there is a landscape buffer there on the western side to buffer this area from the residential single-family units proposed. Sub-area B probably caused most of the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission, particularly due to the setbacks on the western and southern side. The west setback is proposed at 100 feet against the CSX Railroad, and then on the south side is the Hayden Run extension, which the road is going over the CSX Railroad, and it's going to be elevated quite a bit from the grade there. And the applicant is providing buffering and setbacks of 100 feet on both of those setbacks areas. 132 units are proposed here in total, and they are intended to be apartments. Sub-area C is the single-family area of the subdivision in the center of the site, includes a 2-acre central park, and there are 77 actually single-family homes proposed. There was 1 lot removed during the Planning and Zoning Commission review. There is an access point along the north that is intended to provide pedestrian access into the woods there to the north, and then road connections east-west stubbing on the western side to provide eventual connectivity to the west. Sub-area D is in the northeastern portion of the site and will in the future provide access to Tuttle Crossing Boulevard Extended, which the applicant will have to complete. This area is intended to be attached multifamily dwellings. Proposed are about 102, and as I said, overall the units proposed are 360, which would each be approved at the final development plan stage. The applicant is working with engineering to provide a roundabout, generally in this area, to allow for some traffic calming within this area, and there are details required to be provided at the final development plan stage. And then sub-area E is a large park open space area which includes stormwater management, not just for that site, but also for National Church residences, as well as I mentioned the clubhouse, which is intended to be used by all of the residents within Avondale Woods. The applicant has explained that this neighborhood is intended to be inclusive and provide different housing options for different types of people that are interested in lower maintenance or a single-family type lifestyle. And then lastly, the 2 sub-areas are for park space, sub-area F for the Avondale Woods, which is just short of 30 acres, and then the Triangle Woods at 4.8 acres, which are intended to be passive areas where tree preservation is valued. With that, we have, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, reviewed the application based on the criteria for the rezoning and the preliminary development plan, and have determined that they all can be met with the conditions outlined in your memo tonight. And we are recommending approval with the conditions. There are 15 in total that the Planning and Zoning Commission is sending forward to City Council. Majority of those have been taken care of in the packet provided to you tonight, and then there's a couple that need further review at the final development plan stage. So with that, we have a recommendation to you for the approval at the next second reading for that development, as well as the preliminary plat that is included in the application. And I am here for any questions, as well as the applicant and their team.
I have a follow-up question. You indicated that there are private streets in the area, is that correct?
That is correct. In the multifamily areas, there are private streets proposed.
And who would be responsible for maintaining those streets, rebuilding those streets, doing snow removal of those streets, et cetera?
It would be the developer
But the developer leaves.
or the association made up of the, within the apartments.
Yeah, I thought we weren't going to allow private streets anymore because of the taxpayers are already paying for infrastructure development in this community, and this is a double taxation for them in reality, and infrastructure is very expensive to do ultimately when there isn't money put aside along the way.
Yeah, maybe the applicant could speak to that a little bit. We did share some concerns with them about curb and gutter and those elements that are typically included in a public street as well, and they've tried to accommodate that, but the intent is for those streets to be private.
Okay, I understand the applicant has a presentation. Why don't we hear that presentation, and then we'll follow up on that, Marilee. It's a good point. We've had issues with those in the past. Continue to have issues.
Good evening, Mayor Keenan, members of council. Chris Klein with the Blogger and Law Firm, and I'm here with Jim Lepnos, the president of Homewood and Lindeman area from ENH&T. And we did not plan on a presentation this evening, but we are prepared to answer any questions. We'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have for us.
Well, maybe you want to start with Marilee's questions then.
It's something that did not come up at P&Z, except as Claudia indicated, Planning Commission was interested in seeing that the private streets were curbed and guttered and met the same standards as you would see in normal municipal streets. The responsibility would be with the owners. She's correct when she said the residents association. If the entire sub-area is owned by one company in the multifamily situation, then that would also function as the residents association. If in fact any of these were to be taken from the normal multifamily route and turned into condominiums, most likely with the first sub-area A, then that residents association would assume the responsibility for those private roads.
Yeah, that's, been an issue for several years, and we had taken the position that we weren't going to permit it any longer in this community. So I'm disappointed to see that it has gotten through our system with the, expectation that we're going to yet again have private roads that end up being the responsibility of the people living there. This is an extremely expensive proposition for homeowners to take on. It may not seem like that today because they have new roads, but those new roads, and we see ourselves in our city, how we have to maintain them on a regular basis in order to keep them in good shape.
And many of those private roads are not maintained to standards
That's right.
that we would like to see, and we've got numerous examples of that throughout the city.
Correct.
So I think this is all reflected in the way the homeowners association is structured, and I'd be sort of curious to know, since you're the attorney for this project, where's the funding coming for the maintenance of the roads, and how much is built into each unit, whether it's single family or a apartment, and how did you break all that down and do the analysis so that this thing could be maintained in the future?
Well, John, all of the homeowners live on the streets. That's the single family area. The areas that we are discussing are basically typical multifamily areas. I mean, I don't feel this is a typical multifamily project, but it's, I think, fairly traditional that the internal roadways within multifamily projects are in fact private streets that are maintained by the owner of that project. Mike?
Yes. Jim Lipnos, President of Homewood Corporation.
Address?
2700 East Dublin Granville Road. The intention is for us to own and maintain the multifamily areas. We own, I think, 27 to 30 different complexes around the city, and those are funded primarily through reserve for repairs accounts that are set up with, with the rent rolls. and then the single-family structure comes in as part of a kind of a master association to take care of the clubhouse and the pool, but the multifamily areas are maintained by the owner of the company.
What happens to the roads that aren't related to the multifamily?
The public
Those are
roads?
public streets.
Those would be public roads, those would be
No,
owned and maintained by the.
We would take care of those.
Mhm.
It's the private roads, I think, that you have issue with.
Right.
Did we talk, when we said we were going to adopt that policy, did we talk about how we might implement that, or?
Well,
how-
and I think it's important to point out that the private streets are where there are apartments, which is pretty typical of any apartment complex, that the internal streets are private streets. And those are the only streets that are private in this area. Anything related to the single family and the rest of the roadways to the multifamily is a public street.
I guess, one thing that struck me was you mentioned condo, or if they converted to condos. That's always the issue. I know I have a condo office building. We have a sinking fund buildup that we have to contribute so much each month to over the years to pay for the parking lot repair, the roof replacement, all the other kind of things that are necessary to maintain the building and the surrounding infrastructure. So, is there a thought that it's going to go to condo? Is it being built with that in mind?
That is always a possibility. The quality of these units would make it possible to convert to a condominium in the one specific sub-area A, which is 48 units, which has a fairly small roadway component. The best I can tell you at this point in time, since that's conjecture for out in the future, because right now the condominium market for this type of a conversion simply doesn't exist in central Ohio.
I've mentioned several times, Marcia, the roadways back in perimeter between the car dealers and such, they're really not in good repair. And yet we don't have any way to enforce the replacement or to bring the condition up. Is there any way you can put a condition in to make sure the roadways are, we're just trying to make sure that the people that live here, live in this city and pay rent to those apartment units have infrastructure that's going to be usable and work and look right.
Yeah, and the issue becomes a code enforcement issue at that point. And I know the one roadway that you're talking about, we visit there on a regular basis and work with them. They've made repairs, probably not as frequently as you may think would be appropriate, but that is the mechanism is through code enforcement.
Well, and that's,
Well,
that area is so heavily traveled as well. I'm wondering if, since we're not talking about condominiums, because what the issue is, when the streets are not built to Dublin standards, then not only are they privately owned, but they don't last as long, and they, fall out of repair, and then you've got residents that all of a sudden have this huge repair that they weren't prepared for, or in some cases weren't aware was going to be their responsibility. I'm wondering if the legal mechanism by which these would be turned into condominiums in the future, because right now we're just talking about apartments that are going to have a single owner, and that's how they'll be maintained, which I'm more comfortable with that, versus turning it over to a residents association, I think is what we were, trying to get away from when we talk about private streets. So is there a way when these are turned over, or if they were to be turned over, somehow that, we would ensure that there's money there? Aside from that, we just don't have private streets, in which case they're, to city width and to city, depth, and they're constructed to the level, that all the rest of, Dublin neighborhood streets are, and then we maintain them in perpetuity. That could be an advantage for landowners as well.
Several years back, I don't remember the time frame, but we did change the standards that the private streets are constructed to the same level as the public streets. Is that correct, Paul?
That's correct.
So that is something that didn't occur years ago, but that does occur now. So we do build it to the higher standard.
Do you know when we started that?
Yeah, we'll have to get that time frame.
If you were to look in the packet, there's an extraordinary amount of detail in this rezoning. I don't think anyone's ever done a project of this scope with this much detail at this stage in the process. And there are pavement cross-sections for all of the private streets They are, as Marcia and Paul indicated, to the same standards as public streets. And they're expected to be to last to the same degree as a public street would. So this is not like the olden days when private streets were built to a much lower standard and as a consequence encountered maintenance issues.
My problem with this is that I just need assurance that Homewood will maintain these to a high standard. I hope that we never would have another project with this configuration ever in our city again, and I'm a little disappointed to see it. The one apartment complex we allowed in that was rather large is now in a huge state of disrepair. The wood's shot. It's been about 20, 30 years now. The place is really starting to go apart because the management people haven't kept it up. And that's going to be a huge strain on the city inspectors to maintain this kind of thing. So, you know, this footprint, this old-fashioned footprint, you know, I'm really disappointed to see it. You know, it's the kind of thing we used to really push through a sieve to make it a heck of a lot better looking, better quality in our past endeavors at P&Z. So I just would like to know for sure that this thing's going to be maintained. I, as a taxpayer, don't really want to maintain the apartment roads. I want to be guaranteed that they are going to be maintained to a high standard.
Homewood puts aside a 10%. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was going to say, our goal is to own and maintain this in perpetuity. I mean, for as long as we're a company. As I mentioned before, we have a number around Central Ohio that we own and maintain, and we do routine maintenance. We out of the annual budget for the multifamily complexes, we set aside 10% for reserve for repairs. That's for things such as roof repairs, road repairs. In this case, we would have the clubhouse as well. So we do that, and we've owned most of these complexes that we're currently for 30-plus years. We've been in business since 1963, doing both single-family and multifamily. So you've got my assurance and our track record and our history that we've been doing that.
The huge woods component this project has, is there monies from the Homewood Corporation gone into developing that? It says it's a passive park. Are you putting in trails, walkways? I guess I don't know if I see any access for the general public to ever use this. And so I'm sort of curious about that, and because there's no parking to approach it, I guess, unless you live there. So what is the real game plan, other than you put aside a huge block of trees?
Mr. Keenan, could I add something about the discussion Mayor Lee started? This is the first reading, and I was talking briefly with the city manager here. Perhaps we should meet with Mr. Klein. It seems that they're saying they're going to put a reserve fund up. So perhaps we can talk about if they put a reserve fund up and they have to evidence that to us every year, and if they don't, then they're required to bond it. I don't know. It's just a thought that came to me listening to the discussion from council here today to address this problem. So there may be other ideas out there too, but I think that's one that I would explore with Mr. Klein.
That could provide some of the assurance that you're looking for. Do you want to address his question on
We'll be glad to meet. The last point I'd like to make on that subject is that this is a low-density oasis in the midst of very dense Columbus development. It's also in a suburban school district. And so we're very confident that the quality of this neighborhood is going to be economically maintained and desirable for as long as we can envision into the future. So this is not something like you see in other areas in that larger city to the east that we have where the neighborhoods deteriorate. We anticipate this staying good quality all the way.
You know, we appreciate that, but we don't control, of course, what Columbus's zoning determines to do. Unfortunately, it impacts our infrastructure, and so we have to be concerned about that. So we need to make sure that what Homewood is doing or any other developer is our standards, and that it's the people that move in there have that expectation, obviously. The other thing that, Steve, when you're talking and thinking this through, just throw out another idea, that if there is such an agreement, that also there's something in the agreement about if they should sell it, what needs to be conveyed to the new owner, you know, that,
well, I think,
that
Yeah,
I realize Homewood,
Well,
you've been around
yeah.
for a long time, but we saw a major purchase this week, or last week, of somebody that's been around a long time, too.
Yeah, one of the other things that I thought about when they mentioned if we sell it later, it's not, no market's here now, that maybe there's a requirement in this that if they sell it and they condominiumize it, okay, and they have owners, that maybe there has to be some change in the street, what it is, or how it gets paid for, whatever, and it's triggered by X percentage. We'll talk to Chris about it.
Why don't you bring it back to us with some ideas?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, and could you answer my question about the green space? What's going to happen to it? What
The
its function
discussions
is?
that we've had with the city, John, from the beginning is that the city owns those areas. The city will be, the city has the prerogative. They're not interested in hearing what we have to say about that. It's a municipal purpose, and it'll be up to the city to do whatever is done. As indicated, everything we've heard is that the Parks Department considers those to be passive areas in perpetuity. There is parking available on the east side of the northern Avondale Woods, and there's also pedestrian access from the trail in the center of the southern access, the southern boundary of the park area. So right now, they're very, very accessible. They're very dense. They get a little bit wet. If you've got a stand of trees in northwest Ohio, there's a good reason why the farmers never farmed it. So that's why I'm comfortable saying it's destined to be trees in perpetuity.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, the second reading, public hearing will be October 13th.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to ordinance 100-14.
Rezoning approximately 2.9 acres located on the north side of Perimeter Drive between the intersections with Avery Muirfield Drive and Hospital Drive from PUD Planned Unit Development District, Riverside PCD North, Sub-Area A3 to PUD Planned Unit Development District, Riverside PUD North, Sub-Area A3 to facilitate the development of a coffee shop with drive-through.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Ms. Husick?
And hello again. Ordinance 114 is, as you stated, a request for rezoning change to the development text to allow for a coffee shop with a drive-through in sub-area A3 of the Riverside North PCD. This was also reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission in August, and the site is on the north side of Perimeter Drive. City Council reviewed this just a couple years ago to allow for a shopping center within that sub-area. It was previously zoned for 2 freestanding restaurants, and we made amendments to the development text to allow development to occur in a single building. This is the proposed site plan. The applicant has been working with a Starbucks coffee shop to secure a location for their use. And the proposal is to eliminate one of the internal private access drive, which was previously shown here, to accommodate the drive-through and the stacking that would be required for the drive-through. The applicant had previously set aside this eastern tenant space for a restaurant and included patio space at the very eastern edge, which then can be accommodated as part of the drive-through window is concerned. The stacking within the proposal includes 12 stacking spaces, which are shown here on this plan and stack around from this entry drive to the south, which the order window would be in this general area. The plan still meets the parking requirement within the development text, and the Planning and Zoning Commission approved this proposal with a recommendation to City Council to approve the development text that would require a conditional use for a drive-through within the sub-area. They also approved a final development plan that lays out the site as shown here on this plan, and then they also approved a conditional use for this particular drive-through user. They had some discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission about what kind of drive-through would be appropriate on the site, and most of the commissioners felt comfortable that a coffee shop would allow for some uses that would have different times of heavy use from the restaurants that are anticipated in the remainder of the shopping center. Here is a quick sketch of the architecture where the applicant is accommodating the drive-through window in an architectural style very similar to what is existing at the building today. And as I said, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as staff, is recommending approval of this ordinance at the second reading on October the 13th. Thank you, and Mr. Godotti is here as well to answer any questions.
Well, Claudia, I want to applaud you on the fact that it looks like, unlike the Burger King problem we have and some of the other ones, that there's plenty of stacking. I assume that's why the entry was changed and you moved it around.
Correct. The entry drive that was originally here, since it is a private site conditions and fire didn't need that access point to be able to get around the site. It was one of the things that made this work and accommodate not only the code required 12 stacking spaces, but even if it stacks beyond the 12, all it'll do is stack in front of some existing parking spaces, and the idea there is that you're not going to be stacking for very long if people really even do want to drive through past 12 cars in waiting.
Where are you saying the entrance road is to this?
So it would be, the access point off perimeter is, there's one on the eastern side and one on the western side. And in the eastern portion of the site, it would require you to go north and then west and come in here.
Is that where the bank's over there?
Champagne Bank is just off the
Right.
screen here on the eastern side, yes.
Okay.
And then the Primrose Daycare is here to the north.
Mm-hmm.
You know, another nice feature of this is this time, prior to having them have to come back, it looks like there's some pretty nice outdoor dining spaces.
There are.
No, they remove them.
Well,
I mean, the foreground, where it's checkered in,
mhm.
isn't that going to be outdoor dining, or what is that going to be?
For the restaurant that potentially goes into the western tenant space, there is patio area accommodated
There.
generally here. Dewey's Pizza, which is in the center of the site, did not want outdoor seating, and Mr. Godotti can certainly speak to that a little bit more. For the coffee shop, there is area just in front of the southeast corner where patio seating is anticipated.
Okay.
Next to the drive.
Good.
Who'd want to sit there?
Any other questions from council?
No, I just wanted to say I was one of 2 dissenting votes on this drive-through. And when I looked at it, I thought, I was initially not as negative when this first came to us at P&Z. But upon reflection, I started looking at other drive-throughs, and I was at Wendy's. I just happened to be at Wendy's the other day. And what was anticipated for stacking is, wonderful. But there were cars literally wrapped around the Wendy's down on Tuttle Crossing twice. This is a Wendy's. I mean, Starbucks is extraordinarily popular. We've never had good luck with drive-throughs in this community, in this area. They always end up being a negative for the building, the community, the area. And I started looking at this building and started thinking about if we would have had this building come to us at the beginning and they said, well, we're going to put a drive-through on one end, we would have said no way. Planning Commission would have said no. It wouldn't have gone anywhere. It would have been dead on arrival. And instead we get the building, and it's 4-sided architecture. It's a very good-looking building. We have a potential for, we're sold 2 restaurants on either end with patio space, and I know we have the one in the middle that doesn't want patio space, but all of a sudden it's sort of going downhill, and I just don't. We look at the other building that was built by the same applicant and then subsequently sold. On the end of that building, there is a bank that was sold to a local bank who now is paying rent on it, and the developer pointed out that, well, they sold the building, and now, for the next 5 years, there's that empty drive-through, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just there, and, there's a drive-through there, but it's unusable because for whatever reason, it can't be worked out, so we need to put a drive-through here. And I just, you know, that was sort of where I was coming from when I voted no on it. And I don't think it improves the area. I love Starbucks as much as the next person, but, and I think.
We've all gotten phone calls on this. Everybody wants the Starbucks there.
Well, I'm not sure if they want it there or if they just want
Well, they want
Starbucks. So,
Starbucks.
in any case, that was,
You know, the
my
good news
negative.
on the Wendy issue up there is that that's going to be fixed when we do the roundabout at that intersection. That was the promise given to us by the developer, to fix that stacking, and I agree, that is true. I hope it's true. Somebody's shaking their head.
Jeannie is
Well,
shaking her head.
That is true, right? That when that gets fixed and
it
we
won't
close
be
off that entry, there will be stacking all the way back down that roadway where the ingress egress is so bad right now, you about get run over trying to get in and out of there. Forget about the stacking, just getting in and out's an issue.
Right, and if we have that situation here,
Yep.
you know.
You know, I too had reservations, and I've harped on that particular Wendy's location for a lot of years. I did talk to Mr. Gadati and was told that a very large percentage of their traffic, I think it's some 60%, occurs in the morning hours between 7 and 9. Does that sound right? And the other factor is that the three businesses there, Nothing But Cakes and Dewey's Pizza, and presumably the restaurant at the other end, Cap, really their hours are totally out of conflict with what a normal rush hour would be for a Starbucks. So I guess I shared your reservations, but that kind of swayed me to
Well, and
feel better about this stacking situation.
I think that's a point, you know, what we're anticipating, but we didn't anticipate a drive-through. You know, we thought we were getting two restaurants. We thought we had a bank at the end of the other one. We thought, you know, things change. You know, it's a fluid environment, and.
Do we have language with respect to the drive-through if it terminates?
Yeah, how did we end up?
I think we did. I think I read that.
It's only for Starbucks.
If Starbucks moves, it's gone.
It's gone.
At the Planning and Zoning Commission, how they decided to deal with it was to essentially tie the conditional use to a coffee shop, and then also require subsequent conditional use review for anything else, as well as if it was out of business, they would have to restore it back to pre-drive-through conditions.
So if a dry cleaners wanted to come in there with a drive-through, that would have to come back for,
To the Planning and Zoning Commission,
okay.
correct.
What,
So-
you know, I know this is, it's kind of an odd thing, because we really spent a lot of time originally on this discussion, and drive-throughs weren't approved or weren't even discussed, I don't recall, extensively at the time of the original zoning. But we do seem to have challenges with stacking, and it's not just Wendy's, it's the McDonald's across from there. I mean, you can name them that during the rush periods of time, of course, they're all over the place, causing potential for a lot of accidents or certainly inconvenience, if nothing else. And I don't know what the engineering formula is for stacking, but it doesn't seem to be good. You know, it doesn't seem to be working in reality. And I do think that the only saving grace here, frankly, Paul, is that all of the places so far that are currently renting your other building and now this one don't open at this hour. So, you know, there aren't going to really be cars parked there, at least now, but like Amy was mentioning, and I know I've seen in Starbucks, where they're now trying to get in the food business. So that could change also, where they will be more attractive to people at lunchtime and all than just a coffee shop, so to speak. You know, I think that it's No Bundt Cake, by the way, is the name of the company.
Thank you.
And Dewey's Pizza, I think they're all very, very popular and are doing well. And we're certainly glad to have another type of, you know, restaurant-type setting there. But I think you need to be really careful about this stacking and trying to figure out how are you going to deal with, not just say the stacking is resolved, but when it gets to excess, how is it going to be dealt with?
Yeah, and Mr. Gadati had provided some information that is also included in your packet about 3 Starbucks locations within the greater Columbus area. Couple of them are at a much, much bigger road network, much bigger traffic volumes, and There were in that sort of 7 to 9 morning rush, like 161 customers total. For example, in that Lewis Center 23 area, and those were 160 total going into the Starbucks as well as driving through. So when you look at what that would equate to, how many would, even if they were all in the drive-through, but that equate to, it was like 2 a minute or something like that, if they were all indeed in the drive-through, which they weren't, based on the traffic counts that they've provided. The other difference is, and Paul is more than welcome to come up and talk about that, is that the McDonald's and the Wendy's situation, they stack about 12 on site. Once they get past 12, they do stack into drive aisles that are used by all the other businesses within the area, whereas I can't recall off the top of my head how many we actually can fit stacking on site on top of the 12 that are accommodated on this screen in this drawing. So it'll take, you know, a lot, of course, to stack to get outside of this site.
But even when you say that, they're going to be in front of cars that are permanently parked in there.
Potential.
While, you know, that may sound okay because they're moving and they're moving through, that if you're one of those cars and you go out to get out and you can't get out, you don't happen to think that's so much fun. And I know recently I was at another one of those establishments in the general area, and I saw this occurring where the people never could get out because at that point, you know, it happened to be a rush hour kind of time frame, they never got a break because the cars just kept coming in, and so they couldn't get out, you know. So they're, you know, the actual restaurant doesn't take responsibility for trying to have some staff member out there helping to move traffic, you know, obviously.
You know, anecdotally, I go to Tim Hortons pretty much every day, and they move a lot of traffic through there quickly. You seldom see stacking. One thing to remember at a coffee shop, they're not putting a complex food order together, most of which is somebody's morning coffee and off they go. So I would think the time frame would certainly be a lot different than a Wendy's or a fast food provider. So
I'm not sure, though. I thought about that.
Yeah.
But when you go to Starbucks, I don't know, I always spend probably 5-10 minutes wait. I mean, depending how busy it is, the one downtown, and I can spend easily 5-10 minutes waiting on my drink order. And I don't know, you know, I'm assuming if they're in a drive-through, they're going to have to move quicker, but we just never have good luck. We never seem to be able to manage them. They never turn out well. I don't know why this would be any different. In fact, you know, I would anticipate that this would be wildly successful, way more than our wildest dreams. And, you know, we're going to have the traffic issue, and we're going to ruin, you know, a lot of potential for this building because we're, you know, got one end that's completely, you know, taken up by a drive-through. And, you know, when we don't manage the traffic well, or the traffic isn't managed well, then we've got the problems that Mary Lee talked about. And the Wendy's I was speaking about was the one down on Tuttle Crossing. Not Wendy's and Tim Hortons, one Wendy's. I was parked 2 rows of traffic to back out. I was going nowhere. And I looked and I got out of my car and I'm like, really, is this 2? Yes, 2 complete rotations around the restaurant. And, you know, and Starbucks, I know, you know, they'd like to be in the lunch business. They'd like to be in the food business. They'd like to be in the lunch business. You know, that's their business model, is to go forward. So anyway, you've heard my concerns. I felt like I needed to.
I just have one final question. Why was the decision made to put it at that end rather than the west end of the building?
I'm going to hand that over to Paul.
Mr. Godotti, name and address.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Paul Godotti, 6840 McNeil Drive, Dublin, Ohio. I think I can answer most every question, but the reason why it was on the east end, not the west end, is if you think of sitting in your car, you have to be on the side of the car next to the building. You can't reach across the passenger to place your order, so that's why it went on that end. One thing I'd like to point out, we have not, even though this is a 228 square foot expansion to the building, and formerly we had a patio there that could have had outdoor seating, we tried to get Dewey's to go there. They didn't want outdoor seating, they wanted to go in the middle. So what we've done is we've taken one of our restaurant users and put them in the middle. Not our choice, but it's what they want, it's how their business model is, and they're not excited about what they're doing in Worthington if you've seen their location there with the outdoor seating. They don't like to have wait staff going outside. They think it's inefficient, food gets cold, et cetera. Anyway, in not taking this application lightly and hearing the comments from the Planning Commission with regard specifically to the Hortons Wendy's near us and McDonald's, I did some independent research, including yesterday morning at 10 o'clock at Hortons. The 11th car was into the drive lane where you'd be coming into the Kroger or sweeping forward if you were going to keep going towards the Burger King. That 11th car is in the road. The 12th car is now stacking almost into Hospital Drive. I created a diagram, which I'll share with you if you'd like to see between today and the public hearing, that compares our site at code-required 12 cars. Those I don't believe were developed with 12, but even if they were, we've stacked 12 cars with those two locations, 12 cars with ours. The reason why we agreed to a limitation that it can only be used as a coffee shop is because the morning time is when a drive-through for a coffee shop would be used. The question of lunchtime, Starbucks is starting into lunchtime, absolutely correct, but what they don't have a kitchen, so we're talking about heating things that are made off-site that come in and they prepare those. At 2,000 square feet, they don't have the square footage to have a large lunch offering. Will they have lunch? Sure, they've got it now, but it's not where their model is. Anyway, the point being, the cars that we have to our north, this diagram, I know you can't see it, but we can stack 21 cars on our site before we actually get to the private drive. And if you had 21 cars at Hortons or at McDonald's, obviously you'd be into the traffic light rotation. So we don't have a lot of those issues that they have. Hortons' 11th car is into the street. We can get 21 on our site, nearly double, before we even have the first car coming off. And the reason why we're not concerned about blocking the parking to the north is no one else is open. Case in point of that, I spoke to both of our existing tenants, Dewey's and Nothing Bundt Cakes. They're thrilled to have a Starbucks here. I similarly spoke with the presidents of Indian Run Meadows and Lowell Trace. Once again, very excited. I think the comment that I got from Indian Run Meadows is, I'm thrilled to not have to tell my family or friends that they have to go inside Giant Eagle or Kroger to get a Starbucks. So I think there's a lot of positive attributes to having this, and I think the reason why it's okay that it's a morning, the reason why we're okay having it restricted to a coffee shop is most of their business is in the morning relative to the use of the drive-through.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul. Those parking spots that might be covered up with cars going all the way back and around, can we make as part of that would where your employees park, the front area, so there won't be people coming back and forth? In other words, what I'm suggesting is that they block off the possibility of cars pulling in and out of there, and that's where the employees park. So if, say you exceeded your number, and I counted 15 cars, then another 5, and then you start going across the back of those cars in that spot along the drive.
The north-facing ones?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just say make those employee parking spots so nobody's moving in and out. Because the employee's got to park somewhere in this thing.
Right.
And so we could put that as employee parking, tie that up, and then you could back all the way around and have a boatload of cars.
We do have, I think it's 14 or 15 more cars than code requires, but we'd have no problem with that as an additional condition.
Okay.
So you can get us a copy of that diagram for next week's packet between now and 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you know what we're looking for. Any other questions? Okay. The second reading will be on October 13th. Thank you, Mr. Gadati. That'll bring us to Resolution 82-14.
In support of Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission attributable funding and Ohio Public Works Commission application.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Ms. Willis?
Good evening, members of council. Resolution 8214 before you tonight is in support of the application staff has submitted to MORPC for both attributable funds and for the Ohio Public Works Commission for the Tuttle Crossing Extension Project. Staff does recommend passage of Resolution 8214 in support of these two applications. This would bring regional level funds to Dublin in support of construction of this project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on this project tonight.
Council?
Marcia, if I've been asked a few questions by residents about the development on the south side of Tuttle Crossing Boulevard as it goes westward from Wilcox. So if we could get a memo from planning how that will work, because I know the city purchased a piece of that ground. So if we just talk about like how development will work and then what's in the works. I understand there are a few projects in the works in the city of Columbus that have been approved in that area. If we could just get an update.
Okay, all right. There was the memo that was in the packet, I think the last council meeting was included, so you want additional information on the land that the city owns that will be on the south side of?
And just anticipated development,
Okay.
what it will most likely look like and what has been approved on the south side, in the Columbus portion of that part of the world.
Okay, all right.
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Marcia, if we're lucky to obtain this funding, is there a time by which we have to utilize the funds?
There's a time that you can't start construction until July of 2018.
There are two different applications for the attributable funds. It is likely that we would not be eligible for funding before state fiscal year 19, which would be July 1st of 2018. But that depends on how the other projects are ranked and how their fiscal planning, how their funds get allocated out to that point. So it's a little unclear. That's our best, based on conversations that we've had with MORPC staff, that's our best guess of when that funding would become available. OPWC is typically the next year. We are unlikely to be successful with our OPWC application this year, as we are not proposing to go to construction next year. But it's important to get the project out there to see how we rank competitively with other projects in the region.
And there are typically timeframes for when you have to initiate projects, no later than, but typically you can also get those extended.
Okay, and if that's 3 years away, I mean, things do change, so this roadway could change or vary just a little bit, and that does not affect the funding.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before we vote?
No, I just got one quick question. And I'm thinking back on the community plan from years ago, but I was just looking at the density here, 19 acres of multifamily, 29 acres of commercial. Just going to put a lot of stress, 360 acres, and on and on and on it goes. I'm just trying to recall, wasn't some of this area down there designated, and you may not know this since you're in the traffic part of this, conservation design?
As far as the Hayden Run interim plan, corridor plan, is that what you're referring to?
I'm talking about the community plan. I thought we took part of this area, and you don't think so?
We never.
I want to
Don't
check
believe
that.
it was that far southwest.
We never.
We never did it
went
anyway,
forward.
but
We
we
talked
talked a lot about it
Talked
in
a
the
lot about it,
northern
but we
end.
never adopted it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Counselor, my role as chair of the Ohio Public Works Commission, should I be precluded from voting on this? Okay, thank you. If no further discussion, and we'll have a vote on the resolution, please.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Saleh?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerko?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
And I'll abstain. Thank you. Okay, other, we have an update. Ohio Health, welcome.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, I just want to introduce Mr. Bruce Hagan of Ohio Health. He's Regional Executive and President, Dublin Methodist Hospital and Grady Memorial Hospital. And as you approved Resolution 8014 under consent agenda earlier this evening regarding access to fiber optics, we had several discussions about Ohio Health's access to that. And as we had that discussion, it was just amazing all that's been going on with Ohio Health in our community, and appreciate Bruce coming by this evening to give you an update.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it. We've been trying to get this together for a while, and I think it goes all the way back to just about when I arrived, and Mr. Gerber and I had lunch with Chet Poremski, and so glad I finally made it. It's a pleasure to tell this story. I'm going to be as brief as I can. I know it's a little late, but Ohio Health Dublin Methodist Hospital has been off to just a tremendous start, and I think it's interesting to see how this has developed for my chair as a hospital executive about 35 years, and it's really been a terrific story. So, Dana, are you gonna? Oh, Connie's gonna do my slides. Okay. If you could flip to the next one. Got just a few stats here to show how far we've come in 6 years. The number of associates that we have working in Dublin from Ohio Health now. This is not all at the hospital, but we've gone from 900 some to nearly 1,700 just in IT alone. Again, hearkening back to the original fiber nature of this, we've gone from 5 to 250. A lot of those are at the Preserve facility and very nice location there. Associates living in Dublin have gone from 700 to 959, and the salaries, average salary, you can see what the advancement's been there. So the total salary of the associates annualized has gone from $35 million to $80 million within the community. So really happy to see that growth. In terms of physician practices, Ohio Health has been in a process of employing more and more physicians. What's happening within the healthcare industry is that physicians have gotten more and more squeezed on reimbursement by multiple payers, and as their office costs have gone up, they've found it very difficult to continue to try to maintain offices, and have looked at employment as an option increasingly, and we've seen more and more physicians interested in employment through Ohio Health. So these are the practices that are located within Dublin now, and you see a lot of them clustered around the hospital. And then down by the Preserve there, you see some of the other offices that we have located there. But we're going to see more of this occurring, and well, I'll talk in a few minutes about the OU, Ohio University project as well, and what our relationship has been with that. But I think we're going to continue to see additional healthcare development in this area. In terms of facilities expansion, initially back in 2006, we had about 70,000 square feet here in Dublin. Currently, we're at about 570,000. You can see that the hospital and the health center combined for about 360,000 of that. But those other locations that I mentioned as well is about another 200,000 square feet. So our presence has increased in the community, and we have really enjoyed the relationship and the reception that we've gotten here. I'm trying to make sure I'm coordinated on my slides here. It's been a great partnership from our chair. Dana has been terrific, Marcia as well, and working with us on a number of things. And in turn, we have tried to be active within the community for some of the events that have gone on. In charity care, we measure charity care each year, and as a nonprofit healthcare provider, what we try to do is demonstrate how much we're providing in charity care to essentially earn our not-for-profit status. And each year, Ohio Health does provide charity care far in excess of what our tax obligation would be were we a for-profit entity. And we have a complete report on that. If anyone's interested, we'd be happy to share that. But for Dublin Methodist Hospital, we provided $16.6 million of charity care in our last fiscal year, or in our current fiscal year. Our leadership involvement, you can see Leadership Dublin, Project Search. Project Search, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with it, but this is one of the real jewels within the Dublin culture. And I think two of the best days of my year are when the students arrive and get introduced, and then when they graduate. It's really a very moving experience and a terrific program. We're really thrilled to have been the inaugural program within Dublin Methodist, and we're now doing it at Ohio Health Grady up in Delaware as well, and have a lot of these kids that have been placed within Ohio Health and at other employers around the community. So just a terrific program. Sponsorship and attendance at major Dublin events. You can see everything we're involved with there. We are now, as I understand, the 6th largest employer within the city of Dublin, and births, we're going to have over 2,000 babies born at Dublin Methodist this year. So I think the population's, what, about 42,000? So we're going to be adding incrementally to that each year at Dublin Methodist. We've also been consistently ranked among Truven Health's 100 top hospitals in the country. And Truven is, we take a lot of pride in this because there are about 14 different criteria that Truven evaluates based on publicly available data through CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. So it's actual data, it's actual calculation, it's based on things like efficiency, patient experience, quality, different measures like that. And Dublin Methodist has been eligible for that top 100 list for 3 years, and we have been in the top list for 3 years. So I'm very, very proud of that, as is everyone at Ohio Health Dublin Methodist. And incidentally, Ohio Health had 5 hospitals out of that top 100. So again, very proud of that. Also identified as one of the top 5 large health systems nationally in that regard as well. Community, let's see. Community support. Again, like I've said, it's been a terrific partnership. We've had the good fortune to have we have a great development board. Dana's a part of that, and really appreciate him being active with that. But the community has been supportive of us in that regard too, and we've been fortunate enough to have a golf outing at Muirfield Village for the last few years, and this past year we raised over $130,000 in that outing to support programs at Dublin Methodist. We've received a $250,000 gift from an individual anonymous donor for a cath lab, and I know all of you know my predecessor Cheryl Herbert. I was just with her this evening at an event, and she sends her regards. But I know Cheryl, when Dublin Methodist first opened, used to say, we don't do hearts and we don't do heads. Well, we're doing hearts now and we're doing heads. We're part of the stroke network for Ohio Health. We have a cath lab now, diagnostic cath lab, and we are moving more and more into other areas of specialty, which I'll talk about in a minute, but got a very nice gift in support of development of that cath lab. And then LabCorp helped us out with a $7,500 gift for community education activities as well. A couple of the other recognitions that we've received as Ohio Health. 8th year, I believe, for recognition on the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list. And very proud of that one, too, because you submit a big application for it, but what it really turns on is they do random surveying of associates, our employees. And our employees have to confirm what we put into the application, and they do that. So we've been very, very proud of that. I already mentioned Truven, one of the 15 top health systems, one of the 5 top large health systems. We've been on the most wired, Modern Healthcare's most wired list since we've opened as Dublin Methodist, and then Computer World rated us as one of the 100 best places to work for IT. So our IT folks Jim's happy about that. Some of the initiatives, I'll quickly kind of move through these. The growth over the last few years, our maternity unit has expanded. I mentioned the 2,000 babies. We added 8 postpartum beds just this past year, and another special care nursery bed. We do partner with Nationwide Children's Hospital for our special care nursery. Our operating rooms, we started out with 4. We added 2 when we moved the spine program, and Dr. Hersig and Dr. Miley from Riverside. That's when I was at Riverside. We moved them out to Dublin Methodist. Great move. That's been a terrific program. It went from 4 to 6. We have now gone from 6 to 8 ORs. We've got 7 now. We've got an 8th that's under construction. That's all the capacity that we're going to have. So anything else we would do in the future would have to be outside the envelope of the building, but 8 is going to be a nice number for us. And robotics, we've moved into robotic surgery. The 2 specialties that really predominate in robotic surgery are urology, prostate surgery, and gynecologic surgery. And we had a physician who relocated his practice to Dublin Methodist based on what he knew of our reputation, patient experience, and his name's Ronnie Abaza. Had been here locally, but came over to Dublin Methodist. He does 450 urologic robotic procedures a year. That makes him the 5th busiest in the nation. So we've got a premier program here and a true world-class player. And in GYN surgery, Dr. Sokolic and Columbus OBGYN moved their OB practice to Dublin Methodist initially, but they continued to do gynecologic surgery at Mount Carmel. They're now looking forward to being able to do their robotic cases here as well. So more and more offerings coming into Dublin Methodist. I mentioned the cardiac cath lab. We've added radiation oncology. Anyone who's been through treatment, radiation treatment, it's 40 to 50 visits. So imagine 40 to 50 trips to Dublin Methodist, drive up outside the door, walk in, get your 15-minute treatment, walk out, compared to having to negotiate the Riverside campus or one of the other major hospitals. That's been a huge, huge satisfier. I mentioned the stroke network and the electronic ICU. The EICU is sort of an air traffic control system for all of our critical care patients around the system. It's additional eyes, critical care physicians and nurses watching over all of our patients and the monitors, being able to visualize those patients. We have that at Dublin Methodist. In the next 12 to 24 months, we've still got the 4th floor West Tower, which is shelled. We're going to be building that out. That'll be another 20 beds. Right now, our next bottleneck is going to be inpatient capacity, and inpatient's changing. It's inpatient and observation, whatever the status is. That's just a payment status. That's all that means. But the occupancy of beds within the hospital is getting tighter and tighter, and that occurs midweek now and through the end of the week. So we will be adding that. We will be building out that 4th floor with an additional 20 beds very shortly. And then I mentioned the affiliation with the OU College of Medicine. This is a long-standing relationship, and now having relocated or located their family medicine program to the Dublin community and being in such proximity with Dublin Methodist, we are going to end up being a teaching hospital, which is not something that we originally intended, but it does add another dimension to the facility, and the teaching is going to take place in primary care specialties. And the beauty of the affiliation with OU is that OU recruits from Ohio, and their kids tend to, I shouldn't say kids anymore, they're doctors for Pete's sake, but their doctors tend to stay in Ohio, but they do look like kids, you have to admit.
Doogie.
So, you know, again, very good story to tell. Delights me to be able to come and share it with you. I think we have a slide just showing you the folks who are part of our development board, and I'm sure you recognize a lot of the names here. They've been a terrific help to us. So I guess I would just stop there and ask if there are any questions or comments, feedback.
Council?
Yeah, just send my regards to Dr. Miley, and I'm glad he moved up here.
Yeah.
I think it was a big addition to the hospital.
Yeah.
The guy has saved a lot of people from paralysis, and brilliant guy.
Yeah, they do work that is life-changing for people, and
great guy.
They're both great. Yeah. Kersig and Miley are.
I remember telling Cheryl when the hospital actually first broke ground and ultimately opened it, that I felt like we were really a true community when we had our own hospital. That we were, you know, really full service at that point for our residents as well as the surrounding communities. And I think that, I know that I didn't envision, but of course that was your profession, so I'm sure you did, that the incredible medical corridor that's now been developed as a result of the hospital coming there. And as you know, everyone is very excited about OU's Osteopathic Medical College coming here, and the partnerships that they've announced with yourself and Cleveland Clinic and others will really provide to the residents additional kind of medical assistance that you might not get elsewhere. So congratulations to all of you, and we certainly love having you here in our community.
Good. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, you know, as we look forward and we see what's developing in healthcare, we talk a lot about the shift from volume to value. Right now we get paid more for doing more, and that's got to change. And we're working on building the network to be able to move to a more what you might remember as a capitated kind of a system where there's you manage the health of a population versus just taking care of what goes wrong. And as you do that, as you move toward that, the bottleneck's going to occur in primary care. So having that affiliation, and especially having it right here in the Dublin community, is going to be huge in the future. Thank you for your comments.
Having worked with our paramedics for many, many years, we know how important it is that first 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes of emergency kind of situation to get transported, and having it in the community is a really, really big deal for our fire department and those paramedics to get the treatment that's needed. I personally used the hospital. We had a very serious family event 4 or 5 years ago, right after it opened up, and the outcome could have been very, very bad, but the outcome was very, very good because of the attention we received. So we thank you.
Good. Well, we've, our commitment to, this is true for both the Delaware community and for Dublin with our hospitals, is that you can be confident that anything you're having done here at Dublin Methodist is being done as well as it can be done anywhere in the system. And if that's not the case, we can get you seamlessly where you need to be, but we're very confident in making that statement.
We appreciate everything you do. You're a true partner, and we plan on continuing that relationship.
Thank you, and thank you for the time.
Okay. Okay, we have the preliminary plat for Bridge Park East and the staff presentation. Ms. Shusak?
Thank you, members of council. This is a request for review and approval of a preliminary plat for 7 blocks on approximately 30.9 acres of land, coinciding with 7 developable lots with new public rights-of-way to establish the street network, block layout, and dimensions for a portion of the Bridge Street District Scioto River corridor, which City Council just recently approved a code amendment to establish that neighborhood district within the Bridge Street District. Additional internal access will be provided as part of this plat from private drives and dedicated reserve areas. And the plat also includes the vacation of the east-west segment of Dale Drive, as well as the realignment of portions of existing right-of-way. Here, north to the top of the slide, outlined in yellow, is approximately the area that the plat incorporates. On the north side is the John Shields Parkway roadway. On the western side is the Riverside Drive realigned boundary, south side 161 Dublin Granville Road, and then on the east side is the Dale Tuller connector, which is currently under construction. Here is a map of how the area we're talking about tonight fits within the Scioto River Neighborhood District, which is all the land there in orange, which council just recently zoned and later this month will be in effect. And then on the right side of the slide is the neighborhood district graphic that also shows the major road networks that are incorporated within that portion of the development. There in red, what is shown generally in this area at the end of the pedestrian bridge landing is a shopping corridor, and there is some discussion on that particular portion of the plat here tonight. Just quickly an overview how the plat fits within development approvals for the Bridge Street corridor. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved and reviewed in August a basic development plan for all of the blocks there listed on the screen, and they essentially approved the cohesiveness of the framework of the future mixed-use development proposed by Crawford Hoying, evaluated whether or not it set the tone for the public realm, and provided the preliminary analysis for the placemaking foundations of this neighborhood district. This step, the basic development plan review, is one of several steps in the detailed project review of this proposal. Simultaneous to that, the Planning and Zoning Commission then also reviewed the preliminary plat, which essentially sets up the initial steps for public roadways as well as private roadways within the development. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat to City Council, which is before you tonight. The upcoming steps for the Bridge Park development as proposed by Crawford Hoying are development plan reviews, which are in phases. We currently are internally reviewing phase 1. We're expecting that a final plat for phase 1 will also be included for review at Planning and Zoning Commission and then subsequently City Council. There are then followed by basic site plan reviews, which we are currently reviewing one of those for blocks B and C, which are essentially this general area and this general area. And we're expecting those basic site plan reviews as well as the what we would call final site plan reviews to happen as in a block by block kind of phasing. Here is the overview of the plat, and that was part of the basic development plan. As I said, it includes the grid street network set aside from the Bridge Street Code. As I said, it includes 7 development blocks, 3 new public streets, which are essentially Mooney Street. Riverside Drive is down here. North is to this portion of the slide now. So Mooney Street, public street, Tulleridge Drive, a public street, and then the street here, which has changed names a couple of times throughout the proposals, and that is one of the things we would like to get feedback on from council tonight as to the naming of that street. It was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as Broadstone Avenue. The applicant is proposing to name the street Bridge Park Avenue. There is some hesitation on our end to name the street after a development, which the development name is Bridge Park. So there is some hesitation on that on our end. One other name that was contemplated was Park Avenue. So the applicant as well as staff would like to get some feedback on that. The future mixed-use shopping corridor essentially extends from Riverside Drive to the east and is that first section of Bridge Park Avenue. And then, as I said, the preliminary plat is part of that development plan as well that the commission reviewed. Here are the public streets I just mentioned outlined in green. And then these streets in yellow are the reserves, which are essentially private streets within the development that are built above parking garages. They are built to public standards. There will really not be any difference in the feel of those streets. It's really just the location that they're above parking garages that we have stepped away from having those be dedicated as public streets.
Claudia, if I
Yes.
may, as part of our earlier discussion, we talked a lot about maintenance of public streets and, you know, obviously the long-term maintenance, but plowing and that sort of thing, you know, day-to-day maintenance as well as long-term. Can you describe how we anticipate that will be handled?
I am going to get back to you on the details of that at the next meeting, if you don't mind. They are in city-owned reserves, so there is definitely some partnership there going on. As far as maintenance is concerned, they're also being constructed like public streets.
That's fine, if we could just talk about it
Yeah.
at some point, because I think that's going to be top of mind for all of us.
Framed by the earlier discussion, obviously.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And then in red outlined here is that shopping corridor that I mentioned that is listed in the neighborhood district as one of the areas where there is the expectation of high use of pedestrians, a lot of activity on those portions of the street. Here is the preliminary plat as proposed. It has several sheets. I am highlighting this one in the presentation because it's the easiest to discern. The preliminary plat review criteria are part of the subdivision regulations, and they're essentially speaking to what the contents of the plat are. Is the information correct? Are all the site conditions listed? Are the right amounts of right-of-way dedicated, and in this case also vacated? This plat, as I said, includes reserves for private drives, grading and utility information, preliminary storm open space information, a tree survey, and then as required in all preliminary plats, street sections. The street section for the private drives are including 11-foot travel lanes, 8-foot parallel parking spaces on both sides of the street, and then the walkways and planting zones within those areas vary, and again, they're outlined in yellow there on the bottom on the plat. And then for Mooney Street and Tuller Ridge Drive, also shown in yellow on the plat, they're providing a 65-foot right-of-way with the two 11-foot travel lanes. Again, we have 8 feet of parallel parking on both sides. There is the carriage walk included, which allows for door swing as parked cars park and people get out of the vehicles. We have that planter sidewalk area where street trees are accommodated, and then 6-foot sidewalks all incorporated within the right-of-way. And then for Bridge Park Avenue, it changes a little bit character depending on whether or not you are in that shopping corridor centered area or a little bit to the east. But the street section in general, as approved by the Planning Commission, included 2 or 3 foot, 3 11-foot travel lanes, depending on whether or not there is a turning lane incorporated. The 8-foot parallel parking spaces on both sides, also the carriage walk, 3 feet in this instance. 5-foot planter area, and then the 5-foot cycle track and a 6-foot sidewalk, all incorporated within the right-of-way. For the portion near Riverside Drive, that equates to about 87 feet of right-of-way area.
Claudia, I have a question here on this particular slide, PowerPoint. In our packet came a memo. It said, it was dated Thursday afternoon, and it shows the original section with the 87-foot right-of-way, which I believe is the top picture. And then underneath it, there's another revised section, Bridge Park Avenue, 80-foot right-of-way. And in that, the cycle track is eliminated. So could you clarify that? I don't think I understand what happened there.
I was actually going to elegantly throw that to the applicant at the end of my presentation.
So is that the applicant's suggestion, or is that staff's?
Well, there was discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission about what all can be incorporated within the right-of-way in terms of pedestrian activity, in terms of the need for adequate space within the right-of-way and outside of the right-of-way for outdoor amenities such as patios, walking areas. They wanted to make sure that bicycles and pedestrians can navigate safely through that area and that there is a sufficient walkway also provided. And we've been, since Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which was in early August, been working with the applicant to figure out ways to accommodate all, if not all, but most of the requests by the Planning and Zoning Commission, while also making sure that we're creating this vibrant urban space that we've all envisioned within the Bridge Street District, and specifically within those shopping corridor areas that we're talking about on this Bridge Park Avenue. So one of the things that the applicant wanted to get feedback on, and us as well, is whether or not that 80-foot right-of-way, which has some changes to the amenities provided within that section, wouldn't also accommodate all of those things the Planning Commission has asked for, and and meet the objectives of the Bridge Street Code, which they do. So we wanted to have that discussion with you here tonight. So
well, let's have that discussion.
That's why you have that in addition to your materials.
Well, I mean, I thought the original intent was that we were going to make this a bicycle-friendly community, and the bicycle trail would come down and it'd cross the pedestrian. It still crosses the pedestrian bridge, I presume.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's only on one side of the road, right?
The street
the cycle track.
The street section that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission had it on both sides of the road. There was a 5-foot cycle track in that 87-foot right-of-way section.
Okay.
There are some, the 80-foot section that you have as the alternative also accommodates bikes within the right-of-way, either in the street and also within the sidewalk area. There will be a delineated paver section where bikes could be located. The thought behind it was that the serious bicyclist who really wants to get through the district is not very likely going to be riding their bike in those areas where there's a lot of heavy pedestrian activity.
But maybe I'm not looking at the right picture. This one is in this, what was in front of us here, or that we got delivered to our house or something. So the one I'm looking at says on page 1 of 2, it says that, so the top one is called Original Section Bridge Park Avenue 87 right away. Then, if you look on the bottom, it's removing 7 feet. And from what I can gather, it's, there are 6 feet that have been removed of where it was 3 feet, looks like pedestrian walking, although it doesn't have a name next to it.
Right. The section, I put that alternative section up here on the bottom. There was, in this original 87-foot section, this 3-foot carriage walk on both sides of the on-street parking areas. And what the applicant has been able to do is, instead of providing trees within raised planter areas, actually been able to put trees in paver areas which are flush with the sidewalk, and then there would be tree grades, so that allows for cars to open, people to get out of their cars without there being a designated area for that to happen, and then also not a raised curb for people to potentially stumble over. So that is all sort of at the same grade level, and that's the 6 feet that you see there changing.
Okay. And then the, I think that makes sense to me now that you've pointed that out. Then the cycle track sidewalk on the top one is removed to be, it's not removed, it's combined to be called brick sidewalk. It's very hard to read because it's so little, but,
Right,
and it went from 11 feet to 10 feet. So that's where you pick up another foot, a less foot.
Right, and it's still due to the removal of that raised planter and the tree being now flush with the grate and the pavers, actually gets you a little bit of extra space over here where people could still be walking. So there is a total of 12-foot area on the top there. That's what that measurement is. And the idea is that that area would be shared, could be shared with bikes, but most likely people will end up biking there and then either go in the road with it, which has a share row, or get off the bike and walk.
And then it looks finally like the seating area for restaurants, I presume is what that's supposed to be.
Correct.
Is expanded.
Correct.
Which I know we had a lot of concerns about what looked like one chair or something could fit there, you know?
Right. And being able to accommodate, depending on where the building located, 6 to 18 feet or outside of the right-of-way, so that there isn't liability on the city with having people dine and sit and do
Right.
that type of activity within a public street.
Claudia, I'm still a little confused. The original, as you call it, that's something that P&Z has seen?
P&Z has seen this, correct.
Correct? Yeah.
And there was a lot,
Okay, and
sorry.
my next question is, thank you for answering that. So
Sure.
the next question, the revised section, that's something that's being proposed by the applicant here this evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. No.
Amy?
Huh?
P&Z has not seen that?
No. At the time, we had a lot of discussion, the applicant had, and really, I think this might be, the applicant could say it better than I. I think staff and the applicant and planning commission had different concerns about where's all the activity going to be? How are you going to have enough space for restaurants, enough space for pedestrians, enough space for cyclists, a cycle track sort of thing that we described being adjacent to a sidewalk, and then how's that all going to work when there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, plus the people that are dining or sitting out. And then we had the raised planters at that point, and then we had the carriageway. And what I think has happened here is that somebody has come up with a better, I think a better way to address the door swing issue. We wanted to provide room for that, and then we wanted to provide adequate room for all the folks that are going to be sitting out and dining. And this is just, in this Bridge Park Avenue or Park Avenue or Broadstone. The big street there that's leading down the hill to the pedestrian bridge, that we anticipate will be one of the busiest areas, and how to, sort of get all that activity that we want and have everybody be comfortable. And so it sounds like they've just kind of finessed a few things, and,
Would it be fair to say that planning and zoning had input on this then, that they?
yeah, I mean.
By way of suggestion and discussion, then they've taken that and formulated
Well,
this.
I
I'm
understand
asking
what.
the question, that's all, just.
Yeah, I mean, planning and zoning hasn't seen this particular solution, but we did have a lot of discussion about, how's this all gonna fit? And I know, the applicant had concerns about, everything that they wanted to be able to do with the private portion of it where people are gonna be dining and sitting outside.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a stickler, because I want to see a shovel in the ground, I really do, but yeah, it seemed, I'm trying to understand the process here. This went through P and Z, and obviously it's just outlining the boundaries and the like. That's all they're looking at this point, and that's all we're looking at this point. But it kind of troubles me that unless there was a condition by P and Z to, hey, massage this, continue to work on this, I mean, I'm not quite sure why this wasn't shown to P and Z first, because they're getting more into the weeds than this than we ever could.
I think this is probably just the evolution of a project that's trying very hard to get through our process.
Yeah.
And, at different points in time.
Whatever that process is my point.
Right. And to be fair, that's true. I think, Claudia, you did say that you wanted feedback on this, and you wanted feedback on, the name, and there were a number of things.
Right. There were conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved for the basic development plan that went forward. And one of those was that the modifications to the street section described in this report are incorporated as part of the development plan review. And while we had stuff in the report included, the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission also led to those revisions, and we probably should have, at the Planning Commission, changed that condition a little bit to include maybe, and the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission. But that condition essentially needs to be addressed through the development plan and the final plat. And the applicant is waiting to make modifications to this development plan based on council's input, really, on what this preliminary plat looks like, so that they can then model their development plan and their final plat on that.
Claudia, a possible solution to this, the cycle track to me is sort of an important aspect of this, because it goes down, goes across the bridge, you circulate the whole space, you go across the river, you come back up into this area, and I think it's sort of important. I hate to see that deleted, but how's this sound? The raised bed is lowered, as in the revised one, and we pick up some more feet again to allow the cycle path to come back into existence, and giving us also a little more room for the outdoor pedestrian zone. Because, the original idea of this was they were going to, and with the youth coming on today, wanting to use bicycles and all this high-density urban housing we're going to have, they're going to use bicycles, I presume, to get around this pedestrian bicycle-friendly area. So I hate to see it deleted, and especially like Rick, I hate to see it deleted without planning and zoning at least having a look at it. So I think a compromise thing to try to facilitate this, because I, like the rest of the city council, like to see this thing get going as fast as possible, is to drop the raised bed down, pick up the extra footage there, and reinstitute the cycle track, and maybe even give an extra little bit of footage for the pedestrian zone.
Well, maybe to clarify too, the cycle track isn't necessary, it's not removed. There is still the ability to accommodate cyclists essentially on this portion of this brick sidewalk. And from the discussions with the applicant, we understood that there would be delineation there indicating that there's two portions to this walk, one of which would be the one where bicyclists would likely be if they choose to bike on the sidewalk rather than, on the shared use path, I guess, rather than in the street.
Yeah, I just looked at Gay and Fifth downtown where they did have raised beds, and they're really impressive. You know, the architecture of it, the drama of the whole space. But I think I'd be willing to sacrifice that to pick up a little more pedestrian zone and to make sure that there's some kind of cycle zone in this, because I think some people are going to get out on their bikes in the morning and just ride across the bridge and ride back across the different parts of the city and just get out and mess around a little bit, stop for coffee, stop for lunch or whatever, and enjoy the space. I just don't want that precluded, that option for people to enjoy this. I mean, and, you know, so when I see that taken out, I'm thinking,
Yeah, I don't
and
think
then the
it's
whole
saying
thing
that it's
shrinks
not
down from 87 feet to 80 feet. 7 feet is a lot of footage when you're sort of doling out pedestrian and bicycle zones and outdoor dining, so.
But aren't you?
Just a little
what
concerned
you
about that.
lose- Aren't you gaining in outdoor dining what you lose in door swing and
Correct.
dedicated bicycle? And you said that there's still going to be the demarcation on the pavement, which is how we discussed handling the bikeway. Like the pedestrian and bikeway were going to be shared all the way. I mean, just adjacent to each other completely and sort of
Correct. And
coexisting.
The raised planters too will be on the eastern portion of the street. It's not like they're eliminated completely from the street section. It's just in
Right.
this shopping
Yeah,
corridor.
Maybe you could explain, because it took, Marilee and I are sitting here looking at this, and we were trying to figure out, what is this a picture of, what's that? And we finally figured it out.
The green and the blue,
The
you
green
know?
and the blue, yeah.
Yeah.
It's essentially, the blue is that first block as you're coming in from Riverside Drive to that
Right.
first cross street. And then the green is that second block as you're getting to Mooney Street.
I guess I would recommend to the applicant that, in light of what your description was, that although I understand why they removed the cycle track and sidewalk language, that since it will service that purpose, that we should put it back in some way, but even if you don't have the line like they did in the top picture, but slanted or going like this, so that, you know, and with the words, because it misrepresents. It appears that it's been removed when the bicycling, as John points out, was a major foundation of the area, and that isn't the intent, at least.
And couldn't that be picked up with, if you changed it and you went to the revised design and you're picking up 3 feet and 3 feet on either side of the door swing, and you add some of that back into either the pedestrian or the cycle part of it, I mean, you sort of solve the space problem again.
But it was removed and put, it's not removed, it's put in the dining
Yeah,
portion.
and I like that, say, but I'd still like to see some of that reincorporated as a cycle track or a designated cycle track, as you said, Marilyn.
Greg?
Yeah.
I'm kind of with, at least what I think some of Rick's concerns were. I mean, I don't want to do anything that slows this process down. I'd like to move this process along. I feel like we're all of a sudden in the middle of a P&Z meeting, though, and I'd like to hear what their thoughts are on these things. I agree with John. I think the bike track should be there. I also agree, I like the broader outdoor area for seating and whatnot. But I got to tell you, I don't feel like I'm qualified to piece this thing together and say what it is that I like and don't like based on this little drawing here. And I just wish that they would have had the opportunity. I mean, everybody knew this was coming, right? I mean, why didn't we get this sorted out?
Well, and a lot
Where
of the
we sit.
discussion and the changes that were made were based upon the feedback and the information that was learned as part of the P&Z process. Because after that meeting with P&Z, we had many meetings at staff levels trying to sit down and figure out what is the best way to divvy up this space and meet all of the needs of the outdoor seating, the walking, and the cycle track. So as Claudia mentioned, it's the cycle track and the sidewalk is going to be in the same area. There'll be a band, and we talked about at one point when we were doing the streetscape selection, that there could be a granite band or some kind of band that would run down the middle of this wider area that would denote the bike versus the pedestrian. And the good part of that too is when you aren't using the bikes or vice versa, then you have wider area for everybody.
Sure.
So we're not losing it, and part of it too, with this being the preliminary plat, it will go back through the final platting and be reviewed by P&Z.
Well, That's true, and actually, there are some nice changes to this, but again, you know, I mean, I don't understand the process. If P&Z opined on a plat and set those, you know, the setbacks and the size of the streets and all that sort of stuff, then, I mean, what's allowed in this new code? Are we here, we can modify this any way we wish to modify it
Well,
regard the recommendation of Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yeah, and there's been
I mean, if that's what it
instances.
is, that's fine, but I don't understand the code to be that.
Yeah, and I would ask Jennifer to correct me, but in other processes where we do a preliminary plat outside of Bridge Street, typically, we've been doing most of those as consent items, but in the past, there've been a lot of times where they would come back for council review and changes would be made based upon the same things that happen here, what we've heard at P&Z, and just input from council and your feedback. So I believe legally, it's not a problem and it's allowed to do under current practice.
That's correct. We did not alter the plat process with the Bridge Street amendments, and so Planning Commission makes recommendations, but you have the latitude to vary from those recommendations.
This is a prelim. Do we see the final? Does council see the final?
Yes.
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 Anything else?
I'm excited about it's taking shape and seems more real than before, and I look forward to getting, what's the time frame for the final plat?
We are targeting a special meeting that the Planning and Zoning Commission has set aside for October 21st to review the phase 1 of the development plan and then the basic site plan for those first 2 blocks that are immediately adjacent to that section that we're talking about.
I like Bridge Park Avenue, even though I know you don't like that. That's my vote.
Okay,
Thank you for your input.
thank you. Okay, we have some public testimony on this. Mr. Maurer?
I wonder, yeah, I don't think you'll have any trouble doing this. Would you scratch me from from my comments there?
Thank you.
I finally have to go to the online and study the basics of the whole project.
Very good, Mr. Maurer, as always. Appreciate it. We also have a Nelson Yoder and I believe it's Russ Hunter. And you had asked to be called together. If you'd come up and give us your name and addresses, names and addresses.
Hello, City Council, Nelson Yoder with Crawford Hoying Development Partners, 555 Metro Place North. And here with Russ Hunter, Design Director for Crawford Hoying, also 555 Metro Place North. We're here just to talk a little bit about what you have already seen. We'll keep this very brief because it's very late. Russ has some good photos that I think would serve of some various outdoor eating areas in town and some other streetscapes that we'd like to see. Just to pass along the last, oh, she doesn't have it now. Oh, okay. Maybe we won't. Okay. We have some information that we can forward along to you guys, I think, after today's meeting, if that would work. Claudia? Maybe she's just pulling it up now. Are you going to be able to pull it up, do you think?
Give me a minute.
Okay. So we'll start the tap dancing. Russ Hunter has been with us as our design director for about 18 months and been immersed in this project. I worked with him for about 8 years at a large architecture firm here in Columbus. His experience is with Easton Town Center, Greentown Center, and other master planning of large projects such as that. So it's been great to have him on board as part of the team at Crawford Hoying Development, helping to guide the process through. And a lot of the design work that's happened to date has been with Russ's input. So he's going to talk through, once the slides get up, what he's seen and what we've all seen together. We spent about the last 45 to 60 days with staff and with the police department, the fire department, Parks and Rec, and all the city planning folks working through just a higher level of detail from what the Planning and Zoning Commission saw at the last meeting in response to their comments and in response to some of the design considerations we've seen from both the city and ourselves. So I will step away from the mic.
Well, a lot of what we talk about here at this point is going to be redundant because we've sort of already hashed it all out. But what I have been doing is taking a look at precedent, trying to understand exactly what it is we want to create and how we're going to get there. And this is all a part of the design process, so welcome. You get to be a part of it. You know, as we work through this, we fell upon something that we think might be a potential issue, and we think we have a really great solution for it. That's really just what we wanted to get your feedback on. I don't know if how we're doing over there. But, you know, Bridge Park is a mixed-use development, but at its core is going to be a dining destination. First-class pedestrian experience is going to go right along with that, and we really want it to be an urban environment, and that's what we fought so hard to create, that the height of the buildings, that we need them to be a certain distance apart from each other. And way back when, at the very beginning of this process, we looked all over the city to compare it to different areas. So we looked at German Village, we looked at the Short North, we looked at Easton, all to kind of compare what's the height of the buildings and the street envelope. So what is it from building to building that feels comfortable? And you know, German Village is 100 to 110 feet on average, building to building. Arena District is a little wider than that. Short North is a little narrower than that. And as you looked at all these plans and you see the green section versus the blue section, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the blue section is closest to Riverside Drive. That one widens out a little bit, and that's okay because that's sort of a gateway into the experience. But once you get back to past that first road, what's called Longshore Street, that it narrows down, and we kind of said, okay, 100 feet seems to be that right spacing. And so once we got that, and then we took MKSK's signature street section, which is the raised planters that you've all seen, and we apply that, you end up with that 87 feet. But in order to hit the 12-foot clear that's required as a part of the shopping corridor requirement, you actually need another foot beyond that before we can start any of those patios. So that gives us effectively 11 feet or 5.5 feet on either side of that road. And while those sections may say varies, the vast majority of that space is within that 100-foot plus or minus, once you really get into the heart of this thing. And, you know, at the end of the day, 5.5 feet just isn't a whole lot. It doesn't really create the experience that we think is what this is trying to be. And, you know, what I love about what we've come up with is that we actually think it's a more urban solution. We think that it accomplishes all of the same things that we were trying to do with the original section, just a little bit smarter. And it gives us the space that we need. That extra 3 or 4 feet makes a huge difference when you look at patios. And if we had the PowerPoint presentation up here, I actually spent my weekend driving all over the place taking pictures of patios that were...
We're close, we're really close, I promise.
All right. That were 7 feet wide and that were 10 feet wide, 4 to 6 feet wide and 10 feet wide or so. And it really does make a remarkable difference. So, you know, from our standpoint, it just seems to make all the sense in the world that this is a better solution. You know, the other thing that I did want to mention on those raised planters, and at this point I'll just show the pictures when we get up there, that they're actually being built all over the place right now. So that signature street section that has the 5-foot raised planter with it's a 4-foot granite on either side, that's being built right now. It's Nationwide Boulevard, all over Nationwide campus, in our eyes, building that at Grandview Yard. Yep. Here we go. All right, so
next time when I don't respond, did you get that? It means no. Sorry.
So if we can skip through the first couple slides here. And we've covered a lot of that, so this is all kind of redundant. You've seen the original sections there. So one more down. So this, real quick, I just wanted to show you. These MKSK actually did a study to determine if they could fit how big the average patios were, and they actually talked about these 3 patios in particular: Bodega, Boston's, and Matthew Miller's. These function, but I wouldn't say that these would be what we would want to aim for. These were existing conditions. This was sort of the cards that they were dealt. And we have the opportunity now to design this from the start, from the ground up, correctly. So if you go to the next slide, these are some of the comparisons that I did over the last couple weeks. You can see that Hudson 29, Wine Bistro, Spagio, Duomici, these are all places we've all been to. And these are really, really successful outdoor dining places. And you can see that the average is 11 feet of dining and about 20 foot of total sidewalk, so about 9 foot clear. We've actually got 12 foot clear on that side, so this is generous space. You go down to the next slide. These are just images of what we think are some really fantastic meadows. And these are the kinds of things that we want our tenants to have the ability to produce. This is what's going to make Bridge Park Avenue unique and special, something that people are really going to want to go to, and not just for that one restaurant, but for all 10. If you go down to the next slide, this is the original section blown up, so you can actually read everything. But you can kind of see, everything that we've been talking about, the parallel parking spot, the 3-foot carriage walk, the 5-foot cycle track, 5-foot planter, and then the 6-foot sidewalk that gets us to our 87 feet. That 3 to 15 foot, while that is true, that 15 foot is just in little indents within the building. The average that we're going to be looking at is that 100-foot building to building dimension. So it really is going to be right around 5 or 6 feet. This would be under the current section. So if we go to the next slide, this I wanted to just briefly let you see. We have the ability to see this. This is being built right now. So this is, for all intents and purposes, the street section, the original MKSK street section that we're talking about with the raised planters. And there's a couple things that, even if we had all the room in the world, that concern us about this a little bit. And these are not typically used in retail environments because they do create that separation between pedestrian and vehicular, that separation between, as you're driving down the street, if you park your car, now you've got to wander around this big island. The landscape areas can be difficult to maintain, and these here, it's dirt and mulch. They're not particularly pretty, especially when you consider that people are going to be walking through this thing. They just are. You're parking on the other side of it. So then, of course, the raised granite curb forces additional width to maintain proper clear walking areas on both sides. Because now you've got that 5 feet of space that you can't use, but you've also got the 3 foot of space in the carriage walk that it forces you to create, because with that raised curb, you're going to hit your car door on it. So the next slide here. This is just a blow up of the section that we're proposing that we would like to use for Bridge Park Avenue. That, like we said, we think it accomplishes all the same thing. This is a mistake. That should have this should have shown a 5-foot cycle track and a 5-foot sidewalk. But really, what's important is that 12-foot clear dimension stays the same. From the original section to the new section, there's still 12 feet clear space on the side of the tree. And then, if you can advance to the next slide. These next few, this slide here just shows the entirety of the section that you guys have in front of you right now. And then the following slide. This is the blue section. This is something that Claudia alluded to earlier, that we don't want to eliminate the planters entirely, because we think there is one spot where they're probably appropriate, and that's in the blue section. So right as you turn off Riverside Drive, there's not parallel parking there. There's some extra width, because this really is the gateway to the neighborhood. So we think that something like this here could be entirely appropriate, and that's what we're still planning on. But as you move your way further up Bridge Park Avenue, once you cross what is Longshore Street here, that's where it really becomes the dining destination. That's where the buildings come in, and that's where we want to apply the new section. And then the last slide, I believe, was really just to show, this is Boston's in the Arena District. It's 7 foot 6 wide. It's two tops to make a 4-top. I'm sorry, Claudia, I know you hate it when I bring up 2 tops and 4 tops. It's in the weeds. But this is Hudson 29. It's only 3 feet wider. But it gives the tenant the opportunity not only for more seating, but also to create buffer zones. So instead of it just being this simple railing, they might actually be able to do planters. They might actually build onto the building to create enclosed spaces. So, really, it was just, when you get right down to it, there's an awful lot that you can do with that extra 3 or 4 feet. We think that it's worth it in the long run. And that's really all I had. I don't know if you had any additional questions. I think we've kind of beaten it to death.
Yep. Other questions, council?
I don't have any questions, but I do think, I'm in total agreement. gone to all these restaurants too many times, but, and I do think, like Hudson 29, you get a completely different feel when you're sitting there. And of course, they can seat a lot more people as well, but you're still right up to the road, you know, I mean, you have a sidewalk, but, you know, you still feel like you're outside in urban kind of environment. And that's a fast road compared to where we're going to be. And I also do like where the blue and the green differential. I think that coming off of Riverside Drive, I can understand it being wider and then going narrower, at least in the way you're handling it, so that you get a feel that you're also supposed to slow down. You know,
I appreciate your input here as well, and this has made it much more clear to me to understand, you know, what you're trying to drive at here.
Great.
Thank you for that. And I think you did an impressive job of pulling these pieces together.
And thank you for spending your weekend, because it's very helpful for
Yeah.
those of us who are not designers to visualize.
Yep, and see real
This is-
places.
Yeah, it's what it takes.
I'm really glad you guys were able to get that up there for you.
Okay, anything else? All right, then, we're looking for a motion to approve the preliminary plat as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Clarification, as submitted, what does that mean? Is that what we read this weekend or what we were surprised with this evening?
Well, that's a good point. Counsel?
What is it you're asking for?
We should get the revised section in there in the motion, if you all are okay with
I mean, it's consistent with what we just heard here, is that
that.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, very fine.
And Bridge Park,
So who made that?
You wanna make
So I'll make the motion that we approve, I've already forgotten what the number was,
It's not really, that's just a preliminary plat.
preliminary plat
Park East.
with Bridge Park East and with the revised road
As presented.
as presented this evening. What?
thank you very much.
Design. Was
Okay.
lacking the word, you know.
Thank
right.
you.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
Claudia,
You need more clarification on the name?
Mr. Peterson seconds. All right, we'll have a vote on the motion.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes, although I object to the process.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
I'm going to say yes, and we've all been working hard to try and keep the process moving, and I think this accomplishes that, so.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes, because he is including a cycle stripe, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I think that passed, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I can say I also like Bridge Park Avenue. I think that's a fine name.
Any other input on the name? Okay,
It's going to change anyway.
hearing none. All right, that moves us on to the adoption of 2015 council regular meeting schedule. Council, who wants to weigh in on this? Anybody?
What, weigh in on what?
The the regular meeting schedule for 2015.
I think it looks wonderful.
Move to approve.
What, I have one item I would like to bring up,
Okay.
and not because I think Ohio State's going to be in the national championship game, but it is clear that it's important to a lot of people, including many members of our staff. I think we'd be shortchanged not to maybe move that to the following day or find an alternative date for that. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that. What would we normally do, Marcia? Move it to the Tuesday, or?
Well, I mean, that's one where we could have it on the 5th instead of the 12th.
I prefer the 5th and the 13th.
Yeah, if you
Keep
go
it
to
on
the national
Monday.
championship, you don't want to come home the next day when it's over with at midnight.
Okay.
All for
Sadly, I'm out of town the 5th, but that's okay.
football. That's amazing.
Maybe you need to come back and then.
Well, I don't think it's amazing. I think it's, I think that's wrong not to consider other people's feelings about that. It's not just us. So there's a motion, there's a second?
I don't like the way you said that.
Oh, thank you. Is there a second? I understand it to be amended to the 5th.
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay, on the motion?
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
All right, we have staff comments.
Nothing.
All right, council committee reports. Amy, P&Z?
Gosh, well, we had the discussion the other night, last Thursday, about materials. Planning Commission was in agreement with the 20% limit that was passed by council. What we talked about was if there is a project that would like to use more, then they should come forward with a waiver, and then we would make the decision at the time if it was warranted or not. We had a lot of photographs of various applications of cementitious siding, and a pretty good presentation, a pretty thorough presentation, and then we just had a couple samples of physical materials. So I don't know if council would be interested in that, or if your plan is to bring that to us at some point in the future.
Well, that's we wanted to get feedback to see if you felt that it was, the presentation was something that was helpful and beneficial, and we would look at scheduling it for that October 6th workshop with council.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. And then we just had some other cases that may or may not be making their way here, but that's.
Very good, thank you. Rick, Administrative
you.
Committee? Community Development, John? Finance?
No.
Public Services, Amy?
No.
Any other reports on DAC, Board of Education, MORPC, US 33? If not?
I just wanted to say that we did have a MORPC board meeting last week. The new air quality brochures are out if you're interested in them. And really for the sort of first time in the history of announcing air quality issues this summer, there was no air quality negative days. And you might recall last year, every day was actually one. So the weather really, of course, contributes to that being the situation. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to round table then. Greg?
I have nothing, thank you.
Amy?
No, thank you.
Marlene?
Just a couple comments. I noticed the CSAC minutes were June 10th and seemed rather late for us to be getting those. Even if they weren't having meetings in the summer, I think the minutes could have been provided to us shortly following that meeting. I am just curious, I know we've had this information before us in the past on the rock salt procurement update memo, and it seems to me that companies are just taking advantage of last year's situation, and so they're, charging municipalities so substantially more for this salt. Is there some problem with, the demand? I mean, the amount that's even available or something?
That's exactly what the issue is. There was just so much salt used last year that they're having trouble producing enough to get everybody stocked
So
up
it's
for
a
this year.
production issue, really?
Yes.
And so they're going to gouge you for whatever the amount is they currently have?
Actually, one of the companies that bid in the SWAP 4G bid proposed using Chilean salt this year, so they're looking at other sources around the world.
No wonder it's expensive. Are we going to
Yeah.
truck it over from, my goodness.
Yeah. Thank you. And also, I just wanted to mention that I didn't know what how ambitious we are at our HDBA meetings. I know that we do attend them, to remind them that the public parking was not intended for their staff. And I noticed that they seem to be back into taking up quite a few of the parking spaces for the people that are working in the restaurants. And I would encourage us to be more aggressive and assertive with the discussion with HDBA about that. It simply hurts their business to have their consumers not having a place to be able to park.
We have an opportunity tomorrow to raise that issue. We have a meeting scheduled to talk about the communications plan for the transportation projects that are coming up, but we can raise that issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilee. John?
Nothing. Well, just one comment on the grounds of remembrance. I do think, and I see they're looking at two solutions, and and I'm not sure of these two as far as the chemical component of the epoxies, but I'm sure there's a filler that we can use that's going to solve this problem. At least I'm hoping so.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to look, and we'll bring back information to you. I think it's one of the October meetings, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just have one quick item. We did the dedication for the Nestle lab expansion, and I know Dana's staff, Dana McDaniel and Colleen and Michael Cleary and Sue Burness and others were in attendance there, and it was a nice event. We had representatives, I think, from Sweden, Australia, France, the major players of Nestle Corporation in for that. This is one of the largest microbiology labs as I understand, in the world, and assures quality of food products, many of which we all consume daily that are under the Nestle brand. So, in any event, it was a very good outing, and we appreciate your work on that, and a lot of big jobs coming in, and it certainly enhances our economic development kind of activity. So, thank you for that. That's all I have. We'll stand adjourned.